Okay, it started.
How's that? Gavel.
Right.
How you doing?
All right. I need a gavel. I'm trying to hammer tonight. Just like-
Or instructions. Yes.
We're getting ready to get started. Thank you.
Let me cover this microphone up so they can't hear you.
Yeah, you go.
Are we, got a bad back. Everyone ready to go?
I know, it is like, it's hot. You know what it was? Yeah.
Round.
What you got there? You want to show me yourself?
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started here. We're going to call the March 30th Historic West Des Moines Master Plan Steering Committee meeting to order. First is to approve the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda tonight? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor, aye.
Hi.
Opposed, abstentions, agenda passes. Next is the approval of the March 9th minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes?
Their approval?
Seeing none, is there a motion to approve? Motion by Steve, second. Second by Steph Tranel. All in favor of approving the March 9th minutes, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, and the minutes pass. Minutes are approved. Okay, next we'll read the opening statement. Welcome all to the Historic West Des Moines Plan Steering Committee meeting. This committee is made up of independent volunteer citizens. The makeup of the committee was determined the mayor and city council. The committee is not part of the city administration. The steering committee is served in our efforts by the city of West Des Moines staff. The committee's purpose is to, 1, partner with the city of West Des Moines to build interest, excitement, awareness, and community consensus around a comprehensive strategy for historic West Des Moines by representing the diverse interests of current businesses, residents, and investors. Number 2, work towards updating the master plan to address growth and redevelopment going forward into the future. 3, make recommendations and provide guidance to the city council on matters pertaining to the creation, revising, and implementation of historic West Des Moines master plan. It is our goal that the meeting is orderly. We encourage discussion, but recognize the fact that there will be differences of opinion. We request that everyone is shown mutual reverence and discussions are conducted in a respectful manner. To ensure the meeting does not become unnecessarily lengthy, we ask that everyone's testimony be focused on new facts or evidence not already presented. If you wish to speak, please come forward, wait to be recognized by the chair, and then state your name and address for the record. Rules for public comment. When speaking, members of the public should state their name and address prior to making comments. Each member of the public will be given 5 minutes to speak. All statements at the meeting shall be directed to the committee, and cross-conversation among those in attendance is prohibited. Questions shall be directed first to the chair, who then may ask the proper person to answer, with such answer also being directed to the committee. When the opportunity for public comment is closed, the public may only address the committee if a question is directed to them. In closing, the committee does not make final decisions. All recommendations made will be forwarded to the Plan and Zoning Commission and City Council final action. Okay.
Madam Chair, if I could,
Yes, absolutely.
we do have quite a bit of information to get through tonight. And so I would ask the committee and the public to kind of do this if we could. Let the consultant get through their presentation, because a lot of times I think their consultant will touch on things that people have questions about. So let the consultant do their full presentation. Then I would ask for the subcommittee or for the steering committee then to ask what questions that you might have. And then if we could then open it up for the public and to be able to either give statements or ask questions of that type, so that we can try to get through all the material that we have here, if that is acceptable to everybody. Okay, then the second thing is I wanted to recognize one of our members. He's actually going to Friday receive a very big honor. And I'm referring to Scott Hatfield, who's being inducted into Valley High School Hall of Fame.
Wow. Wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
That's all that I have.
All right, wonderful. Yes, congratulations, Scott. What a great
Thank you.
honor. All right, we'll go ahead and move next to Citizens Forum. If anyone has any comments that they would like to state at this point that is not related to any agenda items, you may do so by going forward to the podium.
Would that be what I have to say, or will that come later?
Are you talking about anything regarding to the Railroad Avenue District or the Transition District?
Yes,
So that would come later.
it would be now?
No, that would come later.
Okay, not later.
Yep, after the presentation.
Because I'm referring to,
Yep, so that would be after the presentation and after, yep, after the committee's.
so I'd get started now.
I'm sure you would. Yeah. Any other persons? Perfect for citizens forum?
Hello. Okay, Second Street.
Is this the,
Yeah.
Oh,
this is
sorry.
fine.
yeah, that's part of Railroad Avenue.
I can
So-
do it later, that's fine.
Yeah, it'd probably be best to do it after the presentation. So thank you. I have it ready to go.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, thank you. All right, then we'll go ahead and see no one else for citizens forum. Then we'll go ahead and move along to the next agenda item, which is to continue discussion of the design guidelines for the Railroad Avenue District. We'll go ahead and turn it over to Mike and Aaron for the presentation.
Excellent, thanks. It's great to be back. It's been a little while. I missed the last couple on Zoom, but it's great, better to be back in person. Get a chance to, and one of the things that's really cool about this area is something's different every time I come out. This time I noticed, Debbie, great job on your new windows, by the way. They're awesome. There's always something cool. New windows display, new business, new something. So it's really good, and it's glad to be back in person tonight. So Aaron's got the PowerPoint control, but go ahead and the next slide. Just for the benefit of everyone listening at home and in the audience, we can put a couple of summary slides together about things that have been going on. This is what we want to accomplish tonight. And our really main thing I want to make sure that we do, if at all possible, is get through it and get a consensus on railroad. If we get to the transitional district, I would love to do that. I've had a PowerPoint from last time. I'm ready to go on that, and I'm excited to get back into really railroads. I really want to get through it. So, real quick, how did we get here? We have really been trying to engage the community in this process. This committee alone has spent well over 20 hours, and we'll spend probably double that by the time we're done to get home on this project. We have had 420 participants in workshops, about 500 participants in a survey that we did online. We really appreciate everybody coming out to these meetings. It has been helpful in helping to refine what we're doing. And so we're really trying to make sure that this plan is not built just by your consultant team, but by the community. And so we are appreciative of everyone who's put in this process. This is a quick timeline going back from September, going through the design guidelines as we've got them so far, highlighting some of the workshops that we've had, some of the smaller group neighborhood meetings that we've done, meeting with merchants, obviously with the steering committee multiple times, taking the initial piece of the design guidelines focused on the business core area through the process of getting that approved by city council. And now moving on to other sections of the design guidelines. So we really have trying to be working through this in a process that gets everyone voice heard in the process. So next slide, Aaron. We do have a project website, historicwdm.com. Strongly encourage everybody to connect to that. We are really trying to do our best to keep that site updated so everybody in the community knows what's going on. We've done over 25 project updates on that website so far, where anybody that subscribes to the website gets a blast of what's going on in upcoming meetings and materials and stuff. And it's easy to subscribe. There's a clear button right on the homepage to do that. And I think we have over 100 subscribers already to that website. So that is probably the best way to keep informed of what's going on in this process. Back in January, when we first started talking about the design guidelines and we had the results of our initial visual preference survey, we kind of summarized what we had learned from the community and developed these general statements that I think are still valid today, right? In terms of the fact that Railroad Avenue is different than Fifth and different areas of the corridor. Therefore, it should have different standards for setback and guidelines. Parking is much more important along Railroad than it would be on Fifth, because we've got public lots in the Fifth area, but where we don't have that on Railroad. We still want to carry forward some of the historic character and tradition of the area, pay attention to building heights and those kind of things. So those are kind of the consensus statements that we came out of that early process, and we're still kind of focusing on in this. This is just a reference to the website again. My email contact information as well as Brad's contact information is on there. So anybody from the community or the public that wants to reach out to us during this process in between meetings, feel free to do that. I know Nick's taken advantage of that a few times, and I do appreciate your comments, Nick. Anybody else that wants to do that, feel free to do with that. That's how we get good input in this process. And we talked about a 5-minute limit on public comments tonight, but there's no limit on when you contact me and shoot me an email or whatever. We'll be happy to chat and talk through issues that come up going forward.
Just for reference for the people in the audience here, Mike's been real good about responding within 24 hours. Been real clear on his comments. So do take him up on that if you do have questions.
I can't guarantee you that I will agree on every point, but I will absolutely listen to you. It's like your.
Thanks.
All right, next slide. All right, so this is just kind of a summary of what we've done so far. We've already talked about the architecture, the site design, some of the streetscape stuff, the importance of pedestrian connections and alleys, the importance of screening in the railroad corridor. Tonight, what we want to do is talk a little bit about the development process, so everybody's clear on how that would work. We showed some hypothetical sketches last time, and I think some people thought that there was a developer proposing to do some of those things. We're nowhere near that point, so I want to describe that development process so everybody's clear on how that would work going forward. We want to talk about some of the sub-districts in the area. Obviously, building height was a big topic of discussion last time, so we want to continue that conversation tonight. And then if we can't get to it, again, to talk about the transitional areas a little bit as well. Next. So how would development work in this area? This is all going to be really private sector driven, right? So a developer is going to have to come in if they want to do any significant redevelopment along Railroad Avenue and negotiate with property owners that own the property in that area right now and come to an agreement either to purchase the property or perhaps to do an option of purchase once the zoning is approved or that kind of thing. But it's going to be driven by the private sector. If that property owner doesn't want anything to change on his property, wants to keep it as a single family home or keep it as whatever, he has the right to do that and nobody's going to force him to do anything else. That's kind of the status quo. But if they are interested in seeing some redevelopment or something happen in that way, they could enter into agreement with the developer, some type of developer. If that would happen, then the developer would begin to create some concept plans of what would happen on that property. Then there's a pre-application process built into West Des Moines codes and regulations.
Hey, Mike.
that would come in.
I'm going to interrupt you.
Yep.
Can you project a little bit more?
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
got
Maybe
some
get
people-
closer to the microphone.
Yeah, if you can get closer to the mic.
Yep. No problem.
Thank you.
All right, so, and again, to recap real quick, the developer would negotiate with property owners to acquire properties or at least have an option to purchase those properties, develop an overall plan for the site in terms of what he thinks development wise would work on that property, come in, meet with staff, talk it through to make sure that it made sense. Obviously, the staff would spend some time talking to them about the design guidelines, would probably have given it to them in advance of that conversation and see if that project makes sense, would potentially be appropriate for the area. If it is, the developer would refine their plans and then come back with a specific site plan submittal to the city where we'd go through the public review process. There'd be public hearings, meetings on those plans. Everyone would be able to see what is proposed, to compare it to the guidelines, see if it makes sense. Ultimately, the city council would have the ability to approve that. So all that's to say that any redevelopment along railroad is going to take a little bit of time and it's not a quick instant process, right? So even though we're planning and envisioning what this area could be like in the future, expect it to change overnight. It's going to take a fair amount of time for these things to happen. The overall plan here for redevelopment in the area is what we plan to do is create an overall plan unit development for all of the different areas that we're talking about, and then create these sub-districts in that area that would then be consistent with the design guidelines, talking about the uses of the property, the design character, the building height, the setback, the materials, all of that will be worked into this overall plan unit development. And then individual site plans would be approved within that overall plan unit development for specific development projects. So thought important to kind of highlight that, to kind of give you a bigger picture of how the guidelines that we're working on now fit into development.
And Mike, if I can just kind of, and I want to make sure that I kind of stress this a little bit because I think at our last meeting, it may not have been completely understood. Our master plan that we're working on right now is 30,000 feet. We're looking at the larger, big picture. The process that Mike just talked about is the process that we will be going through when the actual project comes to fruition. So there'll be more opportunities to have input when specific plans come in. So if a developer or a property owner wants to develop a plan in the future for a specific piece of property, that's when it would go through our planning and zoning public hearing and our city council. So right now is not necessarily the time to specifically say what is going to happen on this piece of property. It's what generally could happen on this piece of property. And so I just kind of wanted to set that table to try to make it a little bit clearer for everybody. So thank you.
Yeah, we have sketches in here and Aaron's going to show you those in a couple of seconds. Those are really completely hypothetical. Those are really done to kind of illustrate how would these guidelines be applied to future development, helps people visualize what we're talking about a little bit more and make sure that we've got it right. If we need to modify or something, when you have a picture of it in front of you, it's easier to understand what's being proposed to carry forward that way. So Erin, why don't you take it from here? And she's going to talk you through the railroad pieces and hopefully I'll get a chance to come up and talk about the transitional districts in a little bit. Go ahead, Erin.
Great, thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so let's dive into the sub-districts. As a recap, we are going to be looking at RA1. So this is generally 1st to 4th on railroad. This is where we're currently proposing heights between 1 and 2 stories, and we have a representative image of the architecture that would align with that. We'll be looking at RA2, which is between 7th and 9th on railroad. This is where we're currently proposing between 1 and 3 stories. And we'll also be looking at the areas RA3 south of railroad, and this is where height proposed between 1 and 4 stories right now. At our last meeting, we discussed that 6 stories might be too tall. So we'll be showing you renderings of what 4 stories looks like. And if we want to provide more flexibility there, we can discuss that. First and foremost, I do want to recap what we are looking at making recommendations on. So when a motion does come to pass, just a recap of what we reviewed in terms of the architecture and streetscape. These are the representative images that are showcased. As Mike noted, this is built on the consensus from the visual preference survey and very much does align with the character of the mixed-use commercial. One caveat is obviously the setbacks need to be greater to accommodate what's needed along Railroad Avenue and make for a pleasant environment. We're also recommending that there be pitched roofs to align more closely with the surrounding residential. There's a number of different recommendations proposed as part of the streetscape and pedestrian areas and patios to make for nice gathering spaces that are also buffered and protected from the surrounding traffic. And little elements that add up. So the pedestrian blade signs, the type of window fenestrations, the example you see here is reminiscent of railroad terminals. So we were thoughtful in how we could also bring the history of Railroad Avenue into the mix within the design guidelines. Our news post on February 17th showcased the steering committee feedback and next steps. Those primarily focused on further review and a request for the diagrams and renderings to understand that the guidelines are reality-based. So can what we're proposing exist with parking and heights and setbacks? So those are the renderings I'll be running through shortly. It was requested that we expand the guidelines for pedestrian areas to mirror those of the mixed-use commercial district, and expand the screening and fencing guidelines, especially for the rear lot lines and those adjacent to residential uses. So these are the 2 renderings we'll be diving deeper into. The top is Railroad and 8th, and the bottom is Railroad and 1st. We presented those. We also added guidelines for the pedestrian areas as requested. These are the images from the draft guidelines that were added, as well as specifics regarding mid-block pedestrian plazas and ADA compliancy, festoon lighting and outdoor dining. So it's all the nuts and bolts in addition to the pretty representative images. Finally, we also expanded the screening guidelines to incorporate an element of solid fencing. So this would be along the rear buffer or any areas adjacent to residential lot lines. So the buffer would be between 10 and 15 feet. It would need to include opaque fencing at 6 feet minimum. and landscape screening. And we'll be diving into representative images as part of that as well in the coming slides. So what you see here, this is a new rendering, but in addition to the 6-foot fencing, what we added on here is landscape screening that would be installed at a 8 to 10 foot minimum height so that it can grow to provide greater screening and softening adjacent views. In terms of the sub-district for RA1, so this is the area between 1st and 4th Street on Railroad. We selected this just as an example site where we could test whether or not the guidelines that we were proposing, how they would look, and just give the committee a general sense of what the guidelines look like when applied. So this was the aerial rendering that was shown at our last meeting. Just to give a sense of place, this is the existing view looking northwest at the corner of 1st and Railroad. This was the rendering that we shared, although we slightly modified it. So here we actually added more of a pitched roof versus a parapet. We also added a little detail to the front of the facade in terms of the awnings, but this was primarily the same rendering that was presented on the March 9th meeting. Again, we're looking at 2-story maximum developments here. So this gives you the view looking towards Railroad Avenue, and what you're seeing on the right there is part of that screening with the landscape hedge as well as the privacy fence. In terms of the RA2 renderings, these are generally between the alley at 6th and the alley between 9th and 10th. We took the site between 7th and 8th that's adjacent to Casey's. And this was the same diagram that was presented at the last meeting. This includes a mix of restaurant, coffee, retail, as well as 16 residential units. What we wanted to make sure here is, especially with parking, that the sites can accommodate what is needed. As Mike noted, parking is required on site as part of developments on Railroad. So we ran those numbers, and this site in particular came away with, I think, just under 80 spaces, and we were able to accommodate that. This is an existing view of that corner of the site at the corner of 7th and Railroad Avenue. This is that same view looking at the development. Now, these are 2 different buildings. Some of the other details that we applied to this rendering were truly taking that 10 to 15 front setback, carving out pedestrian spaces, places to sit and dine. This particular rendering, we also created a central courtyard patio, which would be reminiscent of those additional pedestrian areas, similar to the mixed-use commercial, where we have those nice areas between the existing buildings and creating, you know, hospitable spaces that are a bit buffered away from the traffic on Railroad. Now, again, these are just examples, but we did really want to apply the guidelines and make sure that they could come to fruition. That's the point of them. We also wanted to look at that buffering because we know it's really important, the adjacent residential and the views and the distance to the height that we're talking, which in the R2 district, we're looking at between 1 and 3 stories. So we reviewed what the existing screening was. This is looking towards Railroad Avenue from 8th. And with the new expanded screening guidelines here with the evergreens, as well as the 6-foot privacy fence and the landscape buffer, this is dropped into place there along the residential property lines. This is just showcasing existing screening. So this is the side profile of that area on 8th, which is the top image, as well as the area on 7th. And the takeaway here is just that the screening in general varies. Currently, there weren't really any guidelines in place when developments went in. So we are really trying to be mindful to make sure that this is an enhancement and that it really factors in a nice, not only buffer, but just nice landscaping in general. So this again is the diagram which I showed before. The other thing to hit on here is that within the parking lot guidelines, there's going to be requirements for shade trees within landscape fingers. That's really important to reduce the heat island effect and just in general provide more softened views. This is a cross-section rendering. So if you were along 8th, what are the varying distance of things? So the setback I mentioned there, you're seeing that 15 to 20 feet from Railroad Avenue on the right. The profile of elevation of the building, and then the distance between that building and the residential lot line. Now that's to the residential lot line. It's actually, when we measured it, more than 100 feet or so to the actual residential building. This just provides you with a general scale of just the proportions and elements of aspects. And then, as I noted, these are what we're proposing in terms of expanding those screening guidelines. So in addition to the solid fencing, we're speaking to the landscape buffer along the residential lot lines, the opaque fencing of 6 to 8 feet. We're recommending that that be constructed of wood, masonry, stone, metal. We're going to be providing example photos like you see here. And then the evergreens. And so those, again, we spoke with our landscape architect. She recommended that those should be installed at a minimum of 8 to 10 feet, just because if you don't require a minimum, that they'll go in much smaller. And the point here is that you have not instant screening, but you have some screening that then evergreens will grow much taller, some in excess of 20 feet at maturity. So the goal is to create a nice hedge of evergreens across that lot line to soften. So these are just more example photos that we would incorporate it based on the recommendation this evening. And then the last aspect is Railroad Avenue, the sub-district 3, which is looking at those areas south of Railroad Avenue. So this is new. We didn't review these at our last meeting. This was requested. So we took the area at the intersection of Railroad and First, or 63rd, and the existing 3-story senior living facility there on the left, and what you're seeing on the right is the new diagram, just the proposed rendering. And so the idea here is that we wanted to understand what 4 stories looked like in reference to the existing buildings. So this is a site of the existing looking northeast from Lincoln Street. And dropped into place, that would be the view of the 4-story residential. This could be multifamily residential. We also ran numbers for hotel. In both scenarios, there was ample space to provide the parking necessary, whether it was multifamily or hotel. This is another view. This is from
Real quick, just on the parking, just so you guys know.
Yeah.
Part of this exercise was to determine how high we could go and still keep surface parking. And 4 stories is about the answer to that question.
4 stories.
If you went with 6 stories or something above that, you'd really have to go with some type of a parking structure. It's going to be, so that's how that scale worked out.
Interesting.
Great point, Mike. Thank you. This is another view just looking from the corner of First and Lincoln towards that. So it just gives you a general understanding of what the 4 stories is with the 3 stories. The 3 stories does have a pitch roof, so you can see how those interplay together. The other element that we really want to hit on in terms of the RA3 district is the added flexibility. We heard from our survey and from our outreach that this is the area where we do have some flexibility in terms of whether it's a boutique hotel or different types of uses that could, 1, provide some really great sight lines of the area, but 2, be further away from the residential uses. So you have more flexibility. If you want to seek out those experiences, we did hear about, rooftop dining and the boutique hotels. So these are some examples. This is the boutique hotel in Springfield, Missouri, as well as elevated views from a Hampton Inn in Cedar Falls. The design of the Hampton Inn isn't on point with what we're prescribing here, but the views, however, are very much something to consider given the surrounded natural area near the RA3 district. We also heard a lot about just the interplay of different types of uses. The example top left is a brewery and distillery that is also an inn in California. There's different types of modular kind of the container boxes that you see popping up that might be appropriate. This particular one, the All Ride Cafe, is a cyclist spot. And then I hit on the rooftop dining, but that did come up quite a bit in the survey. So those different types of experiential elements does lend itself to some flexibility along railroad. This is an example of a food hall, but also an event venue and live music area in Detroit. It's called Detroit Shipping Company, if you want to look it up. We heard a great deal in the original master plan, as well as from the outreach to date, about live music and different types of experiences such as that people are looking for. The other element that came up at our last meeting was the wonderful surrounding area and how can we factor in recreation. And this would come through the PUD process and the development that would be proposed, but there are ways that we can encourage that within the guidelines. And so if the recommendations here are on point with the committee, what we would do is showcase these similar to the pages on railroad murals, within the existing railroad district to showcase the inspirational images of what we're driving at in terms of experiences and how to create developments that really factor in those goals. So a lot of places are having, rooftop or outdoor bocce ball courts, ping pong, and you're seeing here just the rooftop fire pit example at right. So that is a quick recap, as well as new information regarding the 3 sub-districts for Railroad Avenue. I'm happy to zip back to any of the slides to answer questions, but would welcome it for discussion.
So rumor has it the pizza is here, and pizza is always better hot. So this is a great spot to jump up, grab a piece of pizza, and then we'll open it up for the committee's questions, all right?
Beautiful. Nice job, you guys.
That's very nice.
Really well done.
How you doing, Mark?
Okay, give you 5 minutes, go get pizza if you want it.
Go for it. You're brave enough.
Part of my basement.
Good.
I love those minutes. Those are honestly.
They're-
Don't have alloy.
They're my feisty.
Hopefully they're magic boots.
Yeah, wonderful renderings. I think that really.
Yeah. I mean, the white box is height study and
Yeah.
parking is anything else.
Yeah.
Spend the time to render that.
Know if it's possible to develop on this.
Absolutely it is.
Okay,
That's
cool.
the one I'm really excited about because it's a big, and because you got that pond that's just south of that.
Yeah, with the Five Waters project.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
That would be an awesome project. It's owned by one person. It's actually a company that does do storage things, because I understand it's a pretty flexible development.
Really good.
Yeah.
Haven't got it really great.
I like the idea of like using the shipping containers for stuff, because
You're very.
Celebration of life. We have now the first time I've been prepared, so.
Talk about the industrial area. I really see that.
over there.
Okay,
I
you're,
think that'd be a nice
this,
guy.
excuse me, I don't mean it, but I was, districts, they didn't.
Wait, my pizza.
They were changing the zoning.
You get recognized for
You know enough about that problem, that area.
Really?
I probably agree.
On your beautiful presentation.
And they're wanting to change what they're doing in there. That's for my presentation. I tried to find it in there.
Because we haven't even started to develop.
Oh, for my mom.
We're not there
But
yet.
in the,
Mother wanted that.
One.
Right.
But it was-
Set up there, we just haven't got there yet. Oh, right, okay.
There.
Okay. You know,
This is that, I've been in the light industrial. 60, and this is 2022, and it takes years for. But in the meantime, what I had problems with, I'm living in it, is my house is not.
Did it. And then
I'm not,
what's your Ben?
anything happens, I can build. What I'm concerned
I
about
think you
is,
can.
Yeah.
The way I read the ordinance.
Waiting for it to get warmer,
And
waiting for it to get warmer. Start
Tell me about it.
doing yard stuff and,
may not want to, but you
no,
can.
no, I mean, that's when I was
City code.
building,
Well, the guy came the other day to put down
told me.
the emergency stuff.
Yeah,
So,
I get, oh,
yeah, Brad's.
I've been trying to kind of figure out when to
Yeah.
take crab grass.
Yeah, it says, if there's a fire.
all the
well, I've been,
advisor companies
but I've been.
all the time.
I love it.
Dish.
Down to like low 30s.
Stunning.
I think I read
They wanted me out.
grass will germinate at about
Amazing.
around.
Yeah, it'd be a really cool one. It's a big project.
Yeah,
I'll just go around.
I know, Costco's got
I mean, I was.
fancy stuff, but I'm going,
Where am I?
Finish it so I don't touch it.
I think it's still okay.
2 more weeks. I did that. We made that mistake
And I'm for that.
last year.
the shooting primer? I think this is.
Earl May.
Well,
Middle of
there's a, and down by like
Had a-
realize how.
Up in pots and
7 GMs.
bring them back and forth to the garage all the time.
So like this one.
One of the things that they got said,
Well, I've got a 52
Ellie's.
done.
They were kind of helps them out.
Seven that's done now.
Neighbors that have.
You know,
I'm not gonna do that.
I already.
So
That has-
Black with red and digger.
Like, it's usually got. But you don't buy it when you see it.
We're getting
It's incorporated.
Trying to sucker Linda, I feel like.
Did take it down. Absolutely. It went clear down and
Or like half of the.
came off restoration, just like I did on 52.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Well, you got your piece, so you're happy, go
Well,
ahead.
going like the thing.
Yeah, it doesn't look like
But
we're
no,
getting
but
to the
this is the
mixed use
reason why-
industrial.
Yeah. Strip it all down, and put modern running gear underneath it.
But I'm not
Where
gonna-
do you live?
Yeah.
In the right.
What's, I live on.
Expensive back then.
They got
And we aren't to that area. yet. Aren't to that area. yet.
That's what I wrote down.
I don't do the body and paint.
It was on the map, but it's not on the agenda for discussion
Oh, see, I
this
didn't get it
evening.
in. Okay, so, all right.
Yeah, yeah,
those
but when
were-
we get to those areas, we.
See, that's done. I had that done.
All right, we can get everybody to grab your pizza and grab a seat. Let's get rolling. That's all.
All
That
right.
was kind of our presentation and summary of where we are on railroad. Like I said, I've got a whole nother section to get to on transitional. I hope we get there. But I'd like to reach some consensus on Railroad Avenue first. So questions, comments from the steering committee?
I think the renderings looked great. I think it really kind of helped seeing like the extra screening and everything too between like the residential and the commercial and kind of seeing the heights and sizes of things and obviously the potential for ideas and everything. So I think that was really well done.
Yeah, that buffering is honestly more than I've seen in any other code. Right? Because we've got the fence and we've got a pretty significant evergreen screening. But we heard from the community that that's what you guys want. So
Yeah.
that's what's in the draft.
Does the committee have any questions or comments?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Where did we get the 2-story to 3-story thing? Why? Help me understand that. And you guys said, well, it's more residential and it's not. So I'm trying to get in your thought process on that.
Right. So along Railroad, one, it is an auto-oriented area, right? So you got more traffic and it's busier than when you get more internal to the district, except for fixed. So that's one. Two, land economics plays some value in it, right? To acquire multiple properties and do a redevelopment is expensive. To make that work from a financial perspective, sometimes you need to go up more than 1 story, right? You need to go 2 or 3 stories to make that economically viable. And 3, in our original plan and still in my mind today, the more within reason. The more people we have living in the area, the more it benefits the overall business district. It provides,
Closer to the mic.
it provides, more people available to shop and work in the area. It provides more people on the street, so it looks active and that kind of thing. So having those additional residential opportunities come into play when we start going up 2 or 3 stories.
I don't think you fully answered my question.
Okay.
First to Fifth Street, you're going 2 stories. That's acceptable there.
Uh-huh.
Then we get up to 7th Street. Now we're going to 3 stories. Why?
Well, in that zone, basically between 6th and 8th, it is mostly commercial already, right? So we're
Sure.
really,
What's
Unreal.
the difference? What I'm trying to say is if you go in here, we zone it this way, you tear out all these houses, First to Fifth Street, it's acceptable to put 2 stories there. But now we're saying since we already got some businesses, 7th through 10th, we can put 3 stories there. What the hell's the difference? You still got houses backing up to each of them. You still got single floor housing backing up to all this. What's the difference?
well, in my mind, it's different because most of that area has been commercial all along, right? So it's not a drastic change in use. The height is different for sure. But that's why we're talking, and that's why we put, Aaron, can you put up the section view back up on the screen for us real quick? When you look at that, to make this work, you're gonna have to have roughly, 80, 100 feet, I think about 100 feet between the building and the nearest house. So that distance plus the buffer that we're putting in there, we thought that was a reasonable way to transition the areas and provide the flexibility of allowing that 3rd story. If the committee feels differently and you all feel the 2 stories better, then we'll.
Okay, so then since you got this rendering up, you do quick math on that, 20 foot, 84 foot with those buffers, that leaves you, 96 foot of building. 96 foot of building, that's 150 foot lot deep. So you're roughly going to put 100 by 100 foot building up there. Now I want to put that in perspective for everybody. The Union Building, the rusted building on Fifth Street, that's 68 feet wide by 88 feet deep. This thing is massively bigger than anything that's down there on Fifth Street.
But it's just an option. It doesn't say that that's what has to go in there.
You're also going to have setbacks from A Street though, too.
Yeah, 150 foot loft, so you're probably going to be 100 by 100.
But
Quick math.
But
And
Mayor, to this point, this could go in, doesn't say it's going to, but if you say it can go in, somebody's going to build because it's allowed. So that you need to understand that too, that just because you're talking about what could happen,
I understand.
the reality is sometime it will happen.
Somebody's gonna push the envelope. No,
Exactly. Well, it's not pushing the envelope.
Right.
You're not pushing the envelope at all, Mike.
Right.
Pushing an envelope is saying on a variance to something. That's pushing the envelope. This is allowed.
building to the maximum allowed, I guess.
There you go.
And then
Yeah, and it's going to happen.
I guess my opinion on the mindset of, oh, we already got commercial there. I want you to be mindful that we got a 2-story, which is the old Mission Building on the corner of 7th and Railroad, which stair steps down to a 1-story building backing up to residential. You go across the street, you got Connecticut, 1-story building. Go to 8th Street, you got the woodworking shops, 1-story building. You have Casey's, that's a 1-story building. You got the auto shop, this 1-story building. So to say that it's already commercial and then go to 3-story buildings, that is a dramatic change in our neighborhood that the residents have to look at.
Do you think it won't look pretty? Is that kind of your concern, or won't look aesthetically nice?
So I'm gonna back up and you can probably talk to the residents. The culture shock of seeing a 3-story go up on Fifth Street was like, holy shit, what the hell just happened? So now you're having that back up to your house. I'm just saying, be mindful what you're doing to people's housing around them.
Not everybody was that shocked by 3 stories.
Just saying, it's an example.
Not everybody though. Not everybody was shocked
And we
by that
understand,
development.
be mindful of the residents that are backing up to it, but I think also too, we have to be mindful of the businesses that are going into this too. I mean, as we've seen, rents are increasing, especially with new construction, rents are increasing. And so if you can have those extra levels and those other ways to supplement that income, it lowers that rent for that small business tenant.
I'm
If we
not
want to
saying
keep
I'm
it small
against
business.
that, but I'm just saying we need to be mindful on the 3-story and the size that can go in here.
Right.
And then the next thing is you need to go back to the chart, how many housings this affects. That's the big number these residents need to be seeing.
Absolutely, and we did look at that.
It's
And
like 91% or something.
well, overall, I look like about 70% owner occupied, about 30%.
That's huge. And we talk about single affordable family housing.
It is.
Now you're talking, you're going to rip that out.
Nobody is ripping anything
I
out.
understand, but
The
No,
resident
you
has,
keep using
Right, it's
really
you.
aggressive language like the
They.
city is going to rip it out.
yeah.
No, a property developer will go and make a deal.
yes.
And then
Yeah.
when we go back to that first slide, they're going to go through all of those stages that Brad told us about, where you're going to get way more opportunity to get really into
Saying, why give them the
without the
leverage?
maximum built norms that
Why
could
give them
be
the
built here.
do this now?
It exists already.
We can change it.
So
No, you can't.
So
undo what's
there's no leverage here. This is, as Kevin said, this is what would be allowed if this proposal goes forward. Nobody's being, and I've been hearing a lot of this. They, who are they? Are they the city? Are they the foundation? Are they the people around this table? Are they Mike? They is like this
Developers.
bogeyman out there. So
Developers.
guess what?
We need to specify for you. Developers
Can I
have the
talk,
option. Yeah,
please?
go for it. But
They,
Can I ask this
nobody is forcing they to buy a building, and nobody's forcing any of these people to sell their property. I've talked to people in these zones who say, bring it on. I would love to see the value of my property increase so I can sell.
okay, so the same aspect, Fifth Street is currently zoned for mixed use up there. Why aren't these developers buying that up? So it's the same difference. All the way up 500 block of Fifth Street.
A lot more public exposure. It's a 5-lane road.
What do you mean? What
As
were
opposed
you
to
saying
one lane
there?
road.
Maybe the developers weren't buying because people weren't selling. That's how
Sure, I'm just saying,
America.
Fifth Street's already, 500 block of Fifth Street's already zoned for mixed use. If the developers were hurrying in here, they could bought any of that up.
It's one lane, one-way road. This is a two-way, 5-lane road. So what I'm saying is, we keep talking about they're going to force us to do this, they're going to do that. And I want people to understand, because I keep hearing this. There's going to be eminent domain. They are going to tear everything out. They're going to remove housing. None of that is being proposed. We're talking about what would be allowed. And I don't think everybody has really got that message.
One thing I want to make sure that everybody understands too, the city cannot condemn a piece of property and flip it to a developer. That's verboten by state law. So any redevelopment of a parcel will happen because the developer's been able to negotiate a purchase from that property owner.
And actually, if I can just kind of add in some other things too. So currently right now, so the property that we're talking about that they worked on with the 3 stories, right now it's zoned VHC, which is, Valley Junction Commercial. Valley Junction Commercial has a maximum building height of 30 feet right now. So development has been occurring where they haven't been building to the maximum amount that's allowed there now. It could still happen, but I just kind of want to make clear that right now in that area on that side, it already allows for that 30 feet where you can get the 3 stories.
Is 30 feet 3 stories, Brad?
Generally, it's anywhere from 10 to 12 feet as a story.
Okay.
Generally speaking. So it's kind of there right now. So it's a little bit more that kind of went into why that was allowed there than just, it's not as random as grabbing it out of the sky. It's kind of allowed there now. So there was some of that was put into play too.
And I think we need to remember too, the visual preference survey, questions were raised about scale and height and everything. And the feedback was 1 to 3 along the rail district, and even higher, I believe, was some of the results too. So I think we need to keep that in mind too.
Well,
Ralph?
Yeah, I think the one thing we also want to be mindful of is the planning that's gone into this with the 3-story building and the site angles. So what they did is they created a very private residential setting into that, with that 85-foot buffer with the berming and the fencing and the extra height for the fencing, the 8 to 10 feet. So a person living there probably wouldn't even know there was a commercial in their backyard or side yard, for no better way of saying it, in all honesty. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do with that significant buffer and the distance.
Kevin, and then I see we have some comments from the committee online too.
Like you're talking about in the presentation, that the privacy fence would be 8 feet tall.
6 to 8, yeah.
Okay, but right now, the only thing that's allowed for above 6 feet is industrial, is that correct?
Yeah.
So that would be a change to city.
If we do it as code PUD, we could write it in there.
Okay.
We have some comments on that. I see Debbie, you have your hand up.
You're muted, Debbie.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to, it's trying to click. Thank you very much. I have a couple points. First, it really bothers me when we think about this group as being factions of people. It's a community, at least it needs to be. It's not the residents versus the business owners versus the property owners versus other people that are stakeholders, and certainly our customers. This group needs to think of itself as certainly people with different points of view, but a community of people that needs to think about the welfare of our community. Secondly, there are a lot of really intelligent people and very experienced people that are in this room. And I was thinking quite a bit about strategic planning and scenario analysis. And a hallmark and a key point to that is to look forward in considering a situation and look at the extremes of what could happen. That's what we need to talk about, what could happen. And Mike and Aaron, I think you are top notch. I love what you do. I love what you've done. And I mean that sincerely. I would kind of like to see, I think we're very visual. I would like to see what is the extreme of what could be possible in both directions. Because sometimes if we don't, I mean, your renderings are fabulous. What is the extreme of what could happen? Both directions. And more important than anything, as somebody that taught marketing at the college level with my MBA, I think about branding and Al Reese and Jack Trout and their hallmark pivotally changing book on positioning, which essentially is what is in the consumer or customer or stakeholder's mind as to what we represent. What is Valley Junction? Do you remember that beautiful mind map that Aaron did at the very first meeting? What is Valley Junction, Historic Valley, the Valley? That is the dog. That is the essence. That is the heart. That is the key. That is what is the golden nugget that all of this is about. And when we think about things, I'm sure those of you that are business owners think about what is essential to who we are. And I hope, I know I do, and I know that my colleagues that I talk to do, we want to preserve that key essence, that golden nugget, that heart, that essential, precious commodity. Commodity isn't even the right word because that sounds too stiff and boring. It's the living, breathing essence of what we're all about. And that's what started on 5th Street. It's what started because of the railroad and the valley. It's what started with all of the frame buildings and the first brick building, which I am so in reverence to be able to own. And the pioneers. Everything we do needs to be looked at through the lens of who we at our essence are. That's what I really believe, and that's hope we will. That's really what I hope we will keep in mind as we talk. One more point. I was lucky to go to a seminar once about the believing game. It was when I was teaching English, and it was about reading poetry, which always I always felt that I needed to come up with the right answer. And the manager of the convention seminar said, if someone in your class says, well, I think this poem is about geese, and there's the word goose isn't even in the poem, you need to crawl into that person's mind and try to believe what they're seeing, what they're understanding. Don't just stick to your own position crawl in their mind. And that was a life-changing experience when I went to that seminar. So I would like for us to please not just hear each other, not just listen to each other, but try to crawl into the frame of reference of the people that are speaking and understand what is their story, what is their perspective, why, where are they coming from, why are they saying what they're saying. And it's only by considering all of those perspectives can we hope to come to the center. The secret lies in the center. Robert Frost. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
One quick follow-up on that. Thank you, Debbie. It's awesome. I read a book called Walk Two Moons one time. It was also the same concept of putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. So great comment there. In terms of looking at the maximum density you could get on a site, honestly, our sketch is about that because of the parking requirement. Now, you can reconfigure the buildings differently if you wanted to, and have that layout, site layout be different if you wanted to. But in terms of the square footage, you can get on the site at 3 stories. It's maxed out in those sketches, just so you know.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Debbie, for those comments. That definitely brings up some good points, you know, what is essential to who we are. And I think we not only have to think about that, we have to think about the future of what we are too. And as a lot of business people in this room here too, you think about what you are currently and what you currently have to offer, but you also have to think about where you're going to be and what are you going to do to get there in the future. And this is assessing that growth. So do we want to grow our area or do we want to stay, you know, kind of the same? You know, it wasn't always just, you know, it wasn't always the size that Valley Junction is right now. You know, it started at 1 block and 2 block. You know, eventually it's growing and we're continuing that evolution, continue that growing. So I think it definitely brings up some good points and how we can manage that growth here.
I think Julie's had.
There are some other hands up there.
Can I just add one thing because of your comment, Meredith?
Sure.
I want to clarify that from my point of view, this is not about staying in the past. This is not about keeping buildings old or keeping us old. This is about, for me, not historic preservation, although that's very important. It's about our heritage, and it's about who we will evolve into, starting with where we are. We have to start where we are, but it's a heritage thing, not a keep buildings old thing. I just really would like to clarify that, so thank you.
And also Julie had her hand up as well.
And Julie, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. I have a couple clarifying questions for RA1 and RA2. Does the step down rule apply here? Just to refresh my memory.
For adjacent property?
Yes.
Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it's written into the guidelines right now.
Okay. And then a follow-up question is, so I'm looking at Google Maps. So RA2 is the 100 block of railroad. Could you pull up the zoning, Aaron? RA2.
Julie, RA2 is the area basically from 6th Street westerly.
Okay, and then it goes up to Maple?
No.
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 Just on railroad.
Just on, so the first
4 lots. First 4 lots.
4 lots, okay. That helps answer my question that these types of renderings wouldn't need to be placed in other kind of areas closer to Maple. So no, that's helpful. Thank you.
You have a gentleman back here having a question.
But
Committee
let's let the committee finish their questions first.
Yes.
I'll just propose a thing because we're gonna go to transitional area next. How much businesses do we want down here or potential businesses? Because next we're gonna go to transitional and we're gonna talk about using all that for business too. At what point do we say enough's enough? At what point do we let the residents have their housing?
they have their housing.
saying,
Again,
it's
we're
just
not saying we're
Well, like
taking away their.
Debbie
housing.
said, we gotta look at the projection.
Mhm.
What could happen long-term? We put these transitional areas in, you could have a whole street full of businesses and businesses and businesses. Is that what we want to see for our future? Is that what you want to see down by your houses? Nothing but businesses, you know, so that's something we gotta be mindful of as we're talking about this, the future of all this. So
And the transition zone is different. I mean, the businesses that would go in there would be much different from the businesses that would be on Railroad or Fifth Street too.
I'm just saying, I mean, potentially take housing out here, which is 91% occupied in this area and 70% is owner owned. It's not a rental property. And then, so there's a potential there. And then you get into these transitional areas, it could be the same potential. At what point do you say we need single affordable family housing? Just asking the broad question.
And I think we have asked that question before, and I don't want to regress, but the first plan did come up with suggestions for infill housing. And so I'm with you, I'm for residents, so we're cognizant of that.
Yeah, I mean,
Where it can fit in, I know on A Street, we have had at least 3 new residential structures in the past 2 years, 2 or 3 years. So I think we have to be open to utilize and permit the use of suggested infill lots that we may have in this area, realizing it's limited.
I'm just saying, do you take the risk of being able to take some of these housing out for families? It gets harder. You start putting in these small apartments like on Fifth Street. It's really, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's hard to put a family of 4 or something like in some of these apartments. So you got to be mindful. And if we're wanting to keep families down here, put them in the schools down here. It's just something we got to be mindful because we really haven't talked about the big picture, the big vision. We kind of skipped through a lot of that, where we see ourselves going in the next 20 years, or are we going to be business oriented? Is that's going to be our drive and or what?
Ralph, you had your hand
Yeah,
up.
Aaron, a quick question for you. How many residential units are within the boundaries of that area that we're talking about? Those 2 buildings that would be affected?
Probably, Aaron, if you could, we need to probably break them up between RA1 and RA2.
Yeah, but I can pull up the spreadsheet that was shared in RA2. There are 3 residential properties, one of which is rental and the other 2 are owned. Was that the question, Ralph?
Yes, thank you.
RA3 or RA1 and 2?
Healthy community is a combination of all of the above, right? A healthy community is a nice balance, just like everything in life. A nice balance of all of the above, right? Residences, small businesses, small homes, maybe larger homes. So I think the answer is yes. You know, it's a mixture of all of those things. It's not
balance,
just one thing. Like, you know, you don't want 10 banks on the same block, right? Or so it's a combination. And I think we're all smart. This community is intelligent, and I know our community would understand. It's a balance of all the above. So that's
that chart up with that, like I asked earlier.
Aaron, do you want to put that chart up or do you want me to go ahead and do it? All right.
That should break down roughly how many houses and percentages we're talking about.
You're absolutely right in that there is a lot potentially in the transitional area, but in the RA1 and RA2, there's not that many. 16 in RA1 and 3 in RA2.
I'd like to make a motion in RA1 and RA2 that the tallness of the building, if we're already at 30 feet, is that correct? Is that the height?
The current,
Betty Brad?
yeah, and
Which is already 3 stories.
That's what's allowed currently
Yeah,
now.
Catherine, not to interrupt you, but we haven't had public comment on railroad
Sorry.
district yet.
Okay, I'm just
Sorry.
ready to go.
Sorry.
All right.
Not to cut you off, but I want to make sure people here have a chance to speak
Okay.
before we
love it.
start
Thank you.
making decisions. Yeah, absolutely. Any other comments for the committee before we start going to public comment? Okay. So then railroad district would now be open for public comment here. Oh, yes, Steve, go ahead.
Can we break this down into right now discussing our RA1 and 2?
Yes, before, yep. So the discussion would be limited to RA1 and RA2. Yes, Jack.
On 212 Street. When you're talking about RA1 and RA2, okay, you're gonna go in approximately, if this happens, 4 lots in. You've got an alley there. What are you doing with a half an alley?
We'd have to accommodate that for sure. If you look at the sketches, it kind of shows ways that could be handled.
You showed a drawing of apartment or whatever with a fire pit up on top of the building. Now, is fire pits allowed in West Des Moines or not?
No.
If they're gas.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
I just want to say, thanks for everybody, you know, all the time you're spending, everything like that. Sometimes it seems like it's not appreciated, but you got to look at all angles. Me, being a resident down here, I'm sitting here and listening to some of this discussion tonight, and it's all about business. Not about the residents, okay? You know, being a homeowner down in West Des Moines, 50-some years, I chose to stay. I could move west or any place I wanted to go. I like the community down there. I like the area on Fifth Street. This street is what started this whole thing up. Now we're really on railroad. We've got some people that's not around this area hardly at all. And they're making decisions on what's going to happen for the future.
Excuse me? You were waving at me.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Are you guilty?
I'm not guilty of anything that I know of.
Talking with me, okay? Anyway, we just need to think about the residents too. We're gonna put a 3-story in one area, why not in the other area? Is there anything wrong with thinking about that? Why can you do a two-story from 100 to the 500, but then when you go past that, a 3-story? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Think about what you're doing, folks. Affecting people's lives. You know, it's almost like, well, you know, you got some rentals down here. You got houses down here too, you know. The business has got priorities over that. I'm sorry. But, you know, you're messing with people's lives. Maybe they're happy living down here where it's a little lower key life, you know. Now you're going to start forcing them out of the area. You're going to be bringing more traffic into the area, parking and everything that goes along with it. I mean, you look at everything down here now, the way they drive down on our private streets, our public streets. Imagine what it's going to be like when you get a lot more people down there. Thank you.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I'm always interested, and believe me, I'm listening. What would you like to see for the residents? As you're saying that, I hear you saying something about 2 stories.
If we're going to do 2 stories in the 100 block, then the rest of it ought to be two stories also.
Okay, 2. How about in the residential area?
To go with 3 stories and from Fifth Street on, then do 3 stories down 100 to 500. Me, 2 stories is max.
2 stories. How about residential property? Is there any way we can, sound like you're saying, let's talk about residential properties. And is there any ideas or improvements, suggestions that you'd like to share about the residential?
Just the fact that you know, it's a great place to live down here. It's a great place for people to start living, okay?
Okay.
You know, everybody that just gets married can't afford to move 50th Street or whatever the case may be. They got to start out a little less, you know, and some things like that. So let's not run all of our properties out of down here just so we can be a business oriented area. I mean, we've already got business along Railroad. Got no problem with improving that. Okay. But let's just think about how we impact everything. You know, railroad right now is like a racetrack anyway, okay? You know it, trying to get out there and some things like that.
Don't drive.
You add in more traffic going down through there and things like that. My opinion is stay with the 2-story. That's all I'm asking. Don't be messing with the housing. To start off with, you know, they come in with a proposal of they want to go all the way from Railroad to Maple. Take all those, if you remember right. Okay? He said, no, you know, you're only going to get about 200 foot or so, you know. Just think, this is permanent, you know. Good ideas, you know, putting in new apartments and stuff along there, okay. But I don't think we need to go to 3 stories.
Okay.
My opinion.
Well taken, thank you. Mike, does the recommendation and what we're looking at now affect residential?
Yes, I mean, so as we noted in that table, we told you that there are an RA1, 16 residential units and RA2, 3. We would be more than replacing that though with what we're talking about in terms of new residential. There should be more residential units potentially than there are today.
But those residential would be apartments.
Yeah, they would.
Single family homes.
That's true. Absolutely correct. Absolutely
Or it
correct.
could be condo.
That's significant.
Could be condo, but probably.
Probably not, yeah.
Nickelog 136 3rd Street, on the hood. Would you bring up that slide again for the residential numbers? Thank you, Evan. And that's for RA1 and RA2. Is that just in the area for the Railroad Avenue redevelopment?
If the north side of Railroad, between first
4.
Yeah.
First 4 lots. How many residential properties then are in that block? How many residential properties are in that 100 block from 1st to 9th and a half?
3 times that number. I don't know.
20 homes a block.
Yeah.
So I guess, so a lot more than these numbers are showing. Then I have the Railroad Avenue and First Street development slide, please. No,
She's getting to it.
Yeah, okay. To the left there.
Yeah, gotta find it.
And the aerial view. Yeah. Well, this is the good stuff. So this Main Street Railroad, this will be 3 stories. Notice the residential properties, 10 feet off the property line, 15-foot setback. Over here at Casey's, when that was built, Casey's wanted to set their building back farther. City came in and said, no, you have a buffer between the residents and the building. And that was parking right here. And that's 35 feet. I pasted off for over this street. Over here is 15 feet. Aaron, you talked to a landscape architect this week, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You have 15 feet, a 6-foot privacy fence, and then you're gonna throw in some arborvitaes, right? Something like that. Does your landscape architecture tell you, and I'm speaking with 30 years of landscape experience, horticulture experience, groundskeeping, golf course management. What did your landscape architect tell you for noise abatement
We didn't inquire
Because
about
there will
noise
be-
abatement, although we do have in the guidelines, within the guidelines themselves, details there. It gets more into zoning and what the city handles regarding noise and nuisances.
Okay,
Yeah, I think we were posing a 6 to 8 foot potential fence along the property line.
I know, and it's just a opaque fence.
South.
So I was told, and through my experience, I know the only way you're gonna get noise abatement from this, because these people with the businesses on the first floor, 2 stories of residential, are gonna listen to car doors slam, horns honking. 3 o'clock in the morning, you're gonna have dumpsters coming in. The only way you're gonna abate any kind of noise here is to have a berm. You have to have a 6-foot berm. Forces the sound up and over. Your opaque fence does absolutely nothing for sound abatement. Plantings do nothing for sound abatement. I think this really needs to be 30 foot, 6-foot berms on here, which still gives it an appropriate slope for mowing and to maintain, grow grass, plant larger trees on field from the spot. I've been here 35 years. Can I get the aerial view of Railroad and First Street, please? Back up. The first one you had. Yeah, you got the one for the entire Railroad Avenue?
Mm-hmm.
That's the one you were looking for.
Yep. So if we build with the 10-foot east or upper, what's gonna happen is, I live right here. I hear car horns here. I hear the dumpsters from here. I hear the dumpsters being dumped between 5th and 6th Street, and I live here. And that's at 4 o'clock in the morning. What I'm gonna say is, with your 15-foot abatement buffer between properties, you're gonna affect the entire block here. Not just these properties you're building up against. You will be affecting the entire blocks of these. And that's far more people than the 19 you're showing on your little spreadsheet here. I think that needs to be taken into account. 35 years I've been here. I've always felt First Street and Railroad would be developed all the way down to Hy-Vee eventually. Never did I think I would be looking at 3-story development, having more people into the area. You want to build, think limit, pick up the Railroad Avenue corridor, go all the way down to 14th Street with it, 1-story business. Forget the residential. It's just too much. It's too much visual blockage for the residents. I do like looking out over at the sky, it's trees down there. Excuse me.
Nick, I don't want to cut you off, but you have exceeded the 5 minutes. If you can kind of wrap it up a little bit, please. Thank you.
That's my point. Limit this to 1-story residential only. 2 miles south of here, 2 miles south, you got empty lots down there that are close to what? 30,000 acres? But
I'm not sure exactly where you might be talking about, but
Veterans Parkway West.
yeah,
You got almost 30,000 acres down there.
yeah, I'm
A
not
lot of
sure.
crowd people in there, who are down there.
Thank you, Nick.
I'm for that.
Any other comments regarding the RA1 or RA2 areas?
That take me a minute here.
Debbie has her hand up.
Yes, Debbie.
Thank you very much.
Just a second, Helen.
One of the things that I think it was Ralph or Nick brought up, I think it was Nick, is the topography And I was thinking about First Street coming up from the south. I had a South Des Moines location once, and I used to use that pathway to get to it. And so the idea of coming north on what turns into First Street is a view that I think we need to think about, because right now, as we move closer to that corner, there's not that much to the right, but there is to the left and forward. And when you look left, what do you see? Well, you see a park of lights if it's dark. You see a place of activity and buildings. And first time I went to Las Vegas was a nighttime arrival back when it was energy conservation time. And I said to my mother, what is that big light over there? What is that light? And it was like 2 hours away. She said, honey, that's Las Vegas. And I thought, oh my God, talk about presenting yourself way before somebody gets there. If there's a building on the corner that's tall, that is going to make a difference in how people come up and perhaps are intrigued by turning left and going up Fifth Street to go to Valley Junction. One other comment is the optimal solution is a quantitative methods concept where perfection is generally unattainable and kind of is exhausting. So you look at all of these. Yeah, some of you understand I'm a recovering one. Some of you may think about, oh, this would be a great solution. This would be a great solution. And as a community of people that have been or are residents, property owners of commercial spaces, of retailers, of apartments, and of business people, which actually I'm all of those or have been, all of those different things come together and we don't achieve one point of view. We achieve an optimal solution for the constraints. We used to have constraints and formulas and we'd massage the data and try to figure out what the optimal solution was. And that's what we're doing. So it's not just about the residents. It's not just about developers. It's not just about any one group. And I feel like I just want to kind of keep us on that wavelength, because that is what gives us this rock solid perspective. And when we look back at these meetings and these documents and these decisions, we know that we will have done our, maybe not the perfect job, but a job that satisfies as much as possible the community as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie, for those comments. Helen, not to cut you off there, but go ahead. You may.
Okay.
Yep.
I'd like to do there. My name is Helen Rodish, 109 13th Street, West Des Moines, 50265. I live on 13th and Railroad, which is right now light industrial, and but my presentation is going to include the light industrial and the corridor of Valley Junction. And I've been looking around. I'm the oldest one here in the same spot, so I do have information here. And I'm listening to the residents' concerns, and I understand them because I was a resident and I do have investment in the Valley Junction area other than just my own home. So I'd like to start with, the gentleman has my flower, or I'm not good at it, but he's got my.
Flash drive.
Yeah, that's what it is. Thank you, because I'm not into that. And I don't have internet either, so I got to get a hold of it. But anyway, the reason why is that you're talking your business versus your residential. And trust me, I've been in the middle of all of it, haven't I, Clyde? So he's going to sit there because he can't deny it. So anyway, I wanted to start with my thing. My presentation starts, and I know it's going to lean into the First and Second and Third Street. And this is the concern that the residents has. In 1960, 61, somewhere around in there, 13th and from 11th, on the other side of 11th to 14th Street was a lot of the people owned 7, 8 lots and stuff like that. The city came in, the planning and zoning came in. I shouldn't say city, but the planning and zoning came in and said, oh, that'd be a great area for light industrial. There she goes. Well, I've had a lot of situations there and I'll go from there. This is the holiday park, which you're showing the entrance, and that's what you're wanting to do is kind of go with the historical part of Valley Junction. There it is, right there, Holiday Park. That in itself used to flood 6 feet, 6 feet. Now it's 12 parks named after. Well, anyway, go to the next one. There's your art. There's your art that kind of gives it a good flow coming in. Go to the next one, please. Okay, this is the fire station, which came in a lot later. That block on 14th Street used to have 7, 8 houses. The city bought them out, actually kind of got them out of there to do the fire station. And they used to have the city
Public Works.
Public Works, thank you. And now the Public Works buildings are gone. I noticed I've been noticing it. They tore them all down. So something's being there. So going on to the next, but look at that. No, wait, go back to that one again. Go back to the fire department. See the building? It's brick. See how high it is? It has to be that high because the trucks can't get in there if they don't. Okay, go on to the next one. The car wash. Car wash came in. And one of the problems I had is that please move forward, beep, beep, beep. Well, that's not going to happen to me because I have a right to have quiet in my property and you better watch it because I am spoken up to it. And I went to the city and I went to the gentleman. So I'm very good at talking to the owners of the property. Well, anyway, they built that up because of the flooding. Okay, go on to the next one. Eddie Davis. Eddie Davis came in. My grandfather owns those 6 lots and they sold it to the Piggy Puff factory and eventually it became Eddie Davis, which is a community center. So there again, they have problems with parking there also, don't they? Yep, they have problems with parking. They don't have enough of it. Go on to the next one, please, because I'm going to get 10 minutes and I'm going to get 15 minutes in about 10. Okay, this is Soderberg's. Soderberg's bought the building for Ramco because Ramco wanted to build and they wanted to force me out of buy me out for $2,400 when my assessed value was $11,000. They didn't get it, of course. So they sold to Soderberg's, which is an eyeglass place at the time. And what Ramco had done, which I don't have a good picture of it, they built a hill down and forced it onto my property and threw water on it. Well, please go to the next one. This is the back. Oh, wait a minute, go back to there a minute. The other one, he's having now, because of parking problems, he's having to park 3 in the front. Go to the back, please. This is the back of his property. And there's my property on the side. I didn't get a good picture of it. But there's a dumpster there and trust me, at 3:45 in the morning, beep, 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 bang, bang, bang. And, you know, I got good neighbors, so I go along with it. Well, their parking lot there, they've hired enough people and I didn't get a good shot of it. But they have parking that they have to do along the curb on the south side of it where they got the parking here and there because they're trying to employ. Now, they just built the building to an international business. And you know what? That company's going to be gone because they can't get parking for their people that are working there. Right now, the owner, or the guy that's working there, Jim, has been trying to get parking from Ramco and they won't allow him and there's nowhere he can go. And the only place he could go is street. So there's a parking problem there and they're going to probably, with this international company, move that one out. My property, I did get that, but my property is to the south of this parking lot and it's it's my yard, but it's 2 gardens. I got 200 by 150 foot garden space. And nobody touches it either because that's my baby. But anyway, go to the next one. Please. Okay, this is Subway. Yeah, this is Subway on the alley part of it. And Subway, which I'm very fortunate, only has one or 2 employees and they have about every 3 months they have a meeting there. So they're rather on the quiet side and they get along with me. And they also put the rock there because everybody's coming around the corner. And I told him, I said, put a rock there and they don't drive over it anymore. Go to the other one, please, because I'm hurrying here. Okay, there's the building. The city went and bought out the owner of, what was it, about 25 feet or so when they went to widen railroad. So they had to get that. And so we ended up, and they wanted to, at one time, her guy wanted to come in there, plumbing guy wanted to come in there, put a big building and put it right next to me. And that wasn't going to happen with my standing. Okay, now if you notice, then the next one, please, if I got them in right order. They have beautiful landscaping there. There's my house. Now see where that first set of trees is next to the house? That's my property. See the other one? That landscaping there, that's my property line. And I refuse to have a wooden fence. Now, if you go back in your mind and think about what happened over at Ramco, or when Soderberg's took it over, they had to put in a parking lot and they put up a big 6-foot privacy fence. And here's the best part I had. With that 6-foot privacy fence, it blocked the snow inside. The hill was up here to get into it. And guess what? Somebody come in with a skid loader and guess where the snow went? Over the fence into my property. Well, we had a discussion on that, of course. And finally the fence went bad. And I said, you're not putting that fence back up again because, you know, I've got good people there. I mean, I've got good neighbors for being business people. So anyway, go ahead. And like I said, okay, there's Corn States. Corn States has been there for a long time. And I'll tell you what, they're pretty quiet. But here's the little catch. Please go to the next one. See this house? Do you recognize it? Yeah, it's Underwood's house. They built that house new in about 56 or 58. I can't remember exactly. They bought it from Fisher's, which is an old timers. Now, go to the next one, please. Okay, there's Ramco. Now, do you get the picture? They're sitting in the middle. And I'm sure that if there was someone that would speak up, they would tell you all the problems that they had with the neighbors, the noise, and the attitude of just the people that, the guy was named Joe Fitzgerald. He was the CEO or president of the company. And he says, well, I would just get rid of them people. The same as he had the attitude towards me as he is in residential. Now, that is something to take into consideration when you're talking the other corridors. You're going to have people that are, back please one. You're going to have people that are, you're going to have people that are going to be stuck like that in this residential and commercial area you're talking. Now, this started in 1960. This is 2022, and somebody else can do the math because I can't. So anyway, please go to another one real quickly. Okay, Ramco. Ramco, the next one, please. The next one is the 2 lots, and I don't understand, but years ago it was told that there was a chemical company that did plating, and they cannot build or do anything on that. I'm not sure of it, but that's what my understanding was. So those lots are out of the realm. Okay, please go to the next one. Okay. Okay, I went too far and I didn't get the ones that I got mixed up on there, so I'm not going to have you look for them. But on that street that I was going down through the alley, they have parking on 12th Street, which is owned by Ramco. A guy named Brian just bought him and he's waiting for, he had to pay the alley, so he's not building. He bought him as an investment, which is okay, but he's wanting to have more room. And there's a newer house, which we'll find out later, that a guy's taking real good care of it. To make it quick on that area, there's 10 lots left and 6 houses. I own 4 of the 10 lots and I own 2 of the 6 houses that are left in that area. And what I'm saying is this is what the concern of this area is that they got piecemeal like this and it's taken 60, what's it be? 60 years? Maybe, I don't know. Somebody give me the math. But anyway, it's taken 60 years just to get that far. Now, this one here is houses that are on 11th Street. And you can help me with them because I was going to write them down and I forgot to do it. That's Rochelle's, isn't it? Oh, okay, wait a minute. Did I get the houses mixed up? Okay, so go ahead, please do another one.
Helen, just to let you know, you are at 10 minutes now, Helen.
She's at 10. Right? Okay, these houses are all on 11th Street, and if I make a mistake because I was doing it rather fast, please tell me. Go to the next one. There's another one. That's on 11th, right? Next one, please. What this has to do. Oh, yes, we have auto body shop there. In that auto body shop, it used to be the guy just had one treat car there and stuff like that. But you look at that fence, and that fence is like a mess.
Helen, we did discuss the auto body shop at the last meeting.
I know, but I'm like I said, I'm not taking out of order. Please go to the other slide, please. And I'm just throwing it in there. There's the front of it. Please go to the other side. There's one. That is the kind of things that we're getting along Railroad Avenue right now. Did you have that when you talked about it? Did you see this personally?
That's what we're trying to avoid.
Right. But anyway, like I said, I didn't get the presentation. Please go to the next one, please. Okay, that's a newer size fence that they put up. Okay, so that's good, but that's not where I'm coming from. I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, there's another house. Okay, please go again. You see the houses, these are on 10th Street. There's 3 new houses in the area off of there. Now, I do see that you're keeping that kind of residential on those 2 blocks. But the thing of it is, the rest of it that you're going is all planned out to be business. There's no houses left. Please go further. I'm trying to go a little faster here. Go ahead. Okay, 9th Street. Now this is Colorado, and this is one of the problems we have there is that the neighbor's sitting there and they have now a food truck sitting there and you can't even go in your back because they got a radio blasting. And I'll tell you what, I'm glad they're glad that I'm not owning that house because I'd have a say on about that. But they're having that.
Helen,
They have a fence, but on the backside they have a chain link. So, I mean, but they don't do much business, so I don't know how they stay in business, but that, I love the shop, but that's beside the point. Please go to another one, because I am in.
Actually, I think you're over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we gave you,
Give me 10 minutes, 5 more minutes?
Helen, this exceeded your time. I'm sorry.
I think she can legally.
Well, I didn't get to the point that I wanted to, so do I have another opportunity in the next few minutes to come back up?
We will give you 2 more minutes to wrap it
I'd
up.
like to see her get to her point.
I'm trying to, but I'm going down through the area because it's the corridor and I'm doing more than what you're saying.
You've shown some examples. If you can get to your point, please.
It's not gonna get through there, but anyway, there's the parking on the car lot. Look at the fence on there. You ought to see the other side of the fence. It's a mess. That's what we're seeing on Railroad Avenue, that car lot. Please go to the next one. There's the car lot right there. Please go quickly to the next one. That is Casey's. Please go to another one, because I can go on that. That's the, where they did the woodworking and stuff. But over on the other side, I didn't get it. But go ahead down further, because I'm good there. That one's being emptied. Okay, now you can see what I'm talking about there is the aesthetics of having brick frontage and stuff. And that's where I like the part that you're going. But go ahead further down, please. Holtz. Now this is the one that I want to take a few minutes on. Holtz has parking on 119 3rd Street, and I believe they put the initials. Okay, that's still Holtz parking on 119 3rd Street. Okay, then there's a sign that says private property on that sign there, and I believe they own that house. Now, one of the things is they're more than 4 lots in and they're putting parking there. And I've heard from some of the neighbors that they have complained to the city and the code enforcement. There's no code enforcement of getting them to get rid of that parking lot. Please hurry. Okay, here's the newer houses on that 3rd Street. Look at them. They sold for $200,000. So they're not just cheap houses. In 1993, when the flood came in and Clyde was out there working his tail off, they did a lot of infrastructure filling of brand new houses in the area. They bought out pieces of people's houses and put in new housing. So it's just not it's a very neighborhood community, but you're trying to say, go ahead. Go ahead with the other. See, look at that. Okay, and now this is Holt's building over here. The guy, I talked to him and he thought, well, it wasn't going to hurt anything. So he allowed him to go ahead and build next to his property, but he didn't really realize how much of the problem is going to be. I think this should be one more left or something. I'm not sure.
Oh.
But this should be the last one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, well, anyway, what I'm saying is that the infrastructure in that area, they fought very hard to bring up the housing stock in Valley Junction. And then all of a sudden you're saying, let's put commercial along there. Well, that commercial could take 30, 40 years. And these people that have nice, valuable homes, they're next to commercial, and it just nitpicks all the way through. So I understand where they're coming from, but I also understand that the city and anybody knows that a tax base gets more money when you put 15 people on a lot instead of 1. So anyway, I do have more to say, but that's enough for now. Thank you for giving me the extended 2 minutes, but I would.
Thank you, Helen. Anyone else for public comment on R1 and R2?
Yes, I'm just sitting in that.
If you would come up to the podium and state your name and address, please, sir.
Seven minutes.
My name is Gregory Allen, 713 47th Street. I'm also the commander of the post at VFW 879 at Valley Junction. I have 2 questions. One of them is, are you zoning this thing as commercial, residential, or mixed use, or what?
The sketches, everything we talked about along Railroad is mixed use. It would be both residential and commercial.
So with that in mind, then my next question is the parking. How did you come up with how many parking slots if you got residential and commercial?
Yeah, there's code, requirements in the city's code, parking requirements. We follow those with the provision that if it's mixed use, there is, I think it's a 30% potential reduction in the number of required spaces because some people will work and live in the same area.
So I guess there's a standard for what it is for parking?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not into all that, but, it just seems odd that if you have a commercial, you got people going in and out. And residential, they won't be there most of the day.
Right. That's why you can have shared parking like that. Correct.
So I guess with those numbers, you're gonna make it feasible to have enough people parking there during the day, and then when they come home on weekends, they have a slam dunk of people. I don't know.
Yeah. It's designed to accommodate that. Railroad, as we said, needs to provide parking because there aren't city lots like there is off of Fifth, right? So each development would have to have its own parking and be sufficient to accommodate that.
Yeah, and then that leads me to one more question that you brought up Fifth. If you put anything added on there around Fifth and Fourth, then where's the parking gonna be at there? Because Fifth has a problem with parking right now.
We did a pretty detailed analysis of parking in the area. There actually is sufficient parking right now to accommodate a little bit of additional growth and development. Obviously, when you have an event, all the parking spots are filled. We get that. But on normal conditions, there is adequate parking. Sometimes you have to drive around the block to find it, but there is available parking.
I don't know I don't be there all the time, but when I'm down there, I have to drive around the park. So it's a limited amount of parking spaces, but I won't hold it the time. I hope y'all did a well enough study because that could be an issue.
Pretty sure there's a copy on the website. If not, I'll make sure it's on there.
Okay.
Thank you. Question here. And just regarding the zoning, that was a good question. But we're not changing any zoning as a result of anything that's happening here. Is that true?
It's the area we're talking about right now is currently zoned.
So the zoning's not changing.
Right.
Right now, no, we're just talking about guidelines in terms of these areas. Eventually, the city may come back and look at rezoning some of this, but we're nowhere near that point.
But the railroad area that we're talking about is actually currently zoned as commercial right now, right?
Some of it's on commercial, some of it's on single family. It's a mix. I mean, Brad's got the map if you want to see it.
While he's pulling that up, I got a question. So you got a mix right now. Let's say you got a business that's run down and you want to tear it out of there and put housing back on that. Can you put it back, or do you got to go through a bunch of hoops through the city to get it go back to single family?
Right now, under the commercial zoning, you'd have to come back and get it rezoned, right? If we go with overall PUD and follow these guidelines, then residential there.
You could do single family residential or commercial with residential.
How we write the zoning.
Would that be affected by the new ruling that has came down for legal nonconforming? And because it's zoned mixed, we're not talking about legal nonconforming, are we?
Right.
So we have, Aaron actually pulled it up. This is the current zoning that's in the area now. General rule of thumb for the colors and what they represent. When we're looking at yellows and oranges, those are typically residential. Yellow is single family residential. When you look at orange, it's medium density residential. Brown, you get into a little bit higher density residential. Reds and pinks represent commercial property. So we have our those red areas there. That pretty much covers most of the colors that are on here. As you can see, the majority of the areas along Railroad are already zoned VJC or mid. We're talking about you can see where I believe Casey's is over on 9th, where we were talking about before. That VJC already zoned 4 lots deep as commercial that allows for 30-foot tall building there now. As we deal with zoning and things like that in the future, that has to be fleshed out a little bit. I think I'll let Mike answer that part of it. But right now, when you look at it, just generally, those are the ideas behind the colors that you see there. We're not going way too far off of what's already existing. with some of that.
But
There was,
to that point, back to the east there where we got the yellow, that is still residential. But it's in this area that's going to be mixed use, right?
Yes, this is going right now, that's correct.
So how did we stop going west? Why isn't everything west as well then?
so you're talking about, and actually, Aaron, you mind if I drive?
That's what I was gonna ask you.
It'll probably be easier for me to do it. All right, so it'll come up here. So what we're looking at, you're talking about this area here.
Yes.
Okay, in that area, the other thing that we have to look at, we have the current zoning that's in place. So that's our current zoning. When we pull up and we look at the master plan that's been in place since the mid-90s, I believe.
90s.
Yeah, when we look at that master plan that's in place, turn off things.
Yeah, I think you had it up, Brad.
Did I?
Cool.
There it is. 2010 is the last time it was updated. In 2010, you see that the city, we approved the master plan for this area that is currently zoned single family, like you pointed out, to be orange, which is medium density. So medium density allows for those apartments and that sort of things that's there. That's what was approved in 2010 plan. And so
In the what plan again, just so everybody understands it?
the plan that was updated in 2010.
Comprehensive plan?
The comprehensive plan, right. So we have our zoning, which the zoning is the actual laws that are on place. The comprehensive plan is, and this goes back to you might want to go back to the definitions that are in the binders here. We talked about it at our first meeting, but the comprehensive plan is the general overall plan for the city. As a part of that general overall plan that was accepted back in 2010, this area was then designated for medium density, where we basically said, if someone were to come in and try to rezone that property from single family residential, where that is zoned now, to medium density, it will be a little bit of an easier path for them to do.
But it hasn't happened yet.
It has not happened.
And I would also indicate that was what was in 2010, but we made no changes to there. So that's actually what got adopted in 99. So it's been like that since 1999.
But again, it's all stayed single family.
It's zoned single family because it's one zoning category below. We didn't want to create a bunch of legal non-conforming existing single family houses. So because we can go one zoning category below, that's why we zoned it as Valley Junction single family.
But I think what you're saying, nobody has sold their house to a developer for them to come in and do something like this to this point.
So if it hasn't happened since 99, why do we think it's going to happen now? Why not leave it residential?
I got a question to follow up on that too. He started to originally ask why that single family west of 11th is too. Why is that special down there?
Okay,
Back to the west.
back to the west, all right. Over here.
Yeah.
Now these colors again are the 2010 master plan. You're talking about what we're
Proposing now.
now, okay. So what we're proposing now. Actually, no.
Thank you. Maybe you need to speak on that.
It's also including basically variances where the setback's not the same either, so it's not the same scenario, like where Casey's.
I think simple answer, Nate, is that we weren't proposing any changes through there. Although you do have a legal non-conforming commercial business at 11th, but we weren't proposing any changes from where the existing commercial is now.
Line talk, please.
I'm sorry. What I said, Helen, was that the reason we didn't go any further west with commercial is that we kept it to the existing area that's commercial right now. And that's why we didn't go further west with commercial.
I guess to Kevin's point, why wouldn't you use that same logic on 4th and 3rd Street then?
Because with the 4th and 3rd Street over on the other side, to be blunt, the city or the council already kind of agreed that medium density or a higher use was appropriate there back in 2010.
That's the comprehensive plan. That's not.
Comprehensive plan, and we didn't change any
Not
zoning.
zoning.
That's my point, Brad.
Right, but the comprehensive plan
Is
guides development, and so it kind of makes it so that it tells somebody that if they're going to come into our community and they buy land in that area, that the path of least resistance is a comprehensive plan. Now, has it happened? It hasn't happened to this point, and it may not happen. I'm not arguing that one way or another, but, you know,
But
the
I guess-
council, we've already kind of said a higher density was appropriate there years ago.
At least have
And
the.
this has happened, and that was when Scott tried to build a building on Fourth and Railroad 2 years ago. And he
Because-
tried to get that rezoned to historic Valley Junction business.
Steve?
Trying to ring this in because it's been almost 2 hours. Again,
Thank you.
the zoning discussion has nothing to do with design guidelines, correct?
Correct. So if we can move on and get back to the agenda item, that would be great. Is there any more public comment before we close the public forum on this agenda item? Okay, so the public forum will now be closed on the agenda item for RA1 and RA2.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
That we limit the amount of stories in RA1 to 2 stories and RA2 to 3 stories.
Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
All right, then now opens it up for discussion on that motion item. Any discussion on this?
I guess I'd just be mindful of the residents. I'd like to see 2 stories. Just try to negotiate and make a compromise here.
And we did survey some of our business area and people and stakeholders too. Just as you have consulted with your stakeholders, we have consulted with some of our stakeholders as well too. And so there was kind of a mixed review about this. I think for 3 stories max height, there were a majority of votes were for that. But there were some votes for 3 stories max with adjacency. But it seems like for that area, the people were okay with 3 stories max.
What were the numbers on that, Meredith? Do you have any numbers?
We had 12 votes for 3 stories max of north of Railroad. And then north of Railroad, there were 4 votes for 3 stories max, according to the adjacent step downs. So that gives you some insight on that as well.
Another, I guess you got
On my
a
business.
floor. But I was gonna say, we should have probably looked at the step down. Some of these do back up to a 1 story if you're going 3 story there.
Well, the motion is on the table. I mean, you can vote, and if you don't agree with that, we can always have another motion. But the motion on the table right now is for the 2 stories for RA1 and 3 stories max for RA2. Any other discussion topics? Yes.
And am I correct that the reason that Mike and Aaron not to have that step down from south to north is because there's a parking buffer?
Yeah,
Okay.
you got the distance. Transition.
And Debbie has a comment. She has her hand up.
Yes, Debbie?
Thank you very much. There have been a number of comments about making sure we keep on track. This is such a pivotal discussion. And we have seen so much happen in the last 6 months, year and a half. And I personally feel, and was intending to move myself, that I think we need more reflection and input on this. And I know people are going to disagree with that. And I wonder how neutral we can think about the levity that this is. I am not against planning. Planning is everything. I also am about gathering information that is the basis of everything. It's the scientific method. It's any decision we make. We've got to know the information. And I appreciate the survey, which I saw, but we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands at minimum of people that have a stake in what we decide. And I don't think that we're keeping that enough in mind. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Debbie. And we have gotten lots of responses, again, through that visual preference survey as well, too, and through reaching out to community groups. I mean, one of the slides that, Mike showed in the beginning was that they're reaching out and finding information and meeting with groups and everything. So I think there has been a lot of resources that have been used. And the fact of the matter is this process is dragged out and we have to start making decisions. So if there isn't any more,
Meredith,
just, yes.
there are a lot of people that have spoken out that are not being represented too. And that is going to bite us in the backside if we don't acknowledge that.
Well, and they have every opportunity to make their feedback heard.
How about that motion?
Is there any other session? Yes, Nick.
Just discussion. The Anderson Renewal Building, how many stories is that?
Two.
And it's two in that area. It's only once you pass 7th Street that we go with 3.
No, it would be from 5th west. It would be allowed to go up to 3, according to this. Yes, Ralph.
Isn't that building 2.5 stories?
It's 2 and then it has a little.
Yeah. It's actually 2.5 stories, not 2.
Does that probably approach the 30 feet if it's got that gable then?
Pretty tall.
Probably pretty close.
Yes, if I was.
The Anderson Erickson, the window renewal.
It's probably close.
Yes, Nate.
5 feet.
Warm.
Not to get side rail here. So
2 stories.
current zoning 30 foot, is that to the peak of the roof or where is that? If we're going to like residential style roofs, is that 30 foot to there? Or are we now talking 30 foot?
30 foot is to the maximum height. 30 foot is 30 foot. Nothing can
So
go.
if we're proposing a residential styled roof, there's no way in hell you're gonna hit 3 foot or 3 stories.
Is this one considered 2 or 3? When you take the peak and
That's 2 stories.
That's 2.
so this is 30 feet?
May not be 30
Probably.
feet.
So,
Something like that.
so to get our 3 stories, or now are we making an exception for roof height? So now we're pushing 40 feet?
These are guidelines. Again, those are guidelines. You know what I mean?
So we gotta make,
If the zoning is 30, it's 30. End of story. 30 feet.
That's the proxy then, right?
Yeah.
just,
When there's a, is that to your tallest point or the average, is
I understand that. That's what I do for a living. Like when I say that, but if we're talking 30 foot, there's no way you're putting 3 stories on that and that
Not a
roof.
required 3 stories. It's a possible.
I'm just saying, if you can't even hit that footage wise right now, why is it even on the table? Are we changing the,
No,
to allow that?
Right, so in the guidelines right now, we were talking about a 36-foot height along Railroad in the area that could go 3 stories, not 30. 30 is the
Okay.
zoning. We were-
Is that even sustainable?
36.
So you're talking 10 foot per floor roughly, and then that's only giving you 6 foot. And if you're doing gable roof over an 80-foot building, you're just gonna be like a 1-foot pitch. You're never gonna hit that.
Okay. One clarification, because that's what I was asking Mike. We're not requiring that they have a gable roof or anything like that. We're saying that's what it would look like if they did it.
I thought she said she made a recommendation for residential style roofing on these now.
Yeah, I talked about it, but
Scratching that.
but one, it wouldn't have to be the entire roof of the building. We showed some examples where there was a roof on a portion of the building, but not on other portions of the building. So it's really going to come down to the design in the end.
I'm just making sure we're not wasting our time on this if you're going to a residential style roof.
Absolutely. Any other discussion?
And may I ask a question? So should we be, the motion be in the form of stories or feet? I don't know if it was in the form of feet.
I would say stories, probably.
I was going with what was recommended by the insights, the surveys, the workshop, our team at Tesca.
So
So is it recommended go by 3 stories or feet stories? Okay. Recommended by your stories.
Can we call the vote?
Written as stories here in the
Question? All right, on
Roll call vote.
roll call vote? So just a reminder, vote in the affirmative is to vote for 3 stories.
Well, it's the two stories for RA1 and 3 stories.
Sorry, thank you. Yes, thank you for clarifying.
Maybe you should take the separate votes.
Motion, the motion,
RA1,
Yeah.
Christine, go ahead.
the motion is to limit 2-story in RA1 and 3-story in RA2. That's
Okay.
the motion.
All right.
We ready?
Yep.
Okay. Nate,
No.
Meredith,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
yes, Leo,
Yes.
Scott Hatfield,
Yes.
Scott Cutler,
Yes.
Seth Crannell,
Yes.
Catherine Harrington,
I made the motion. I can
Still have to vote.
affirmative, yes.
yes,
You, yes.
okay. Kevin does not vote. Sue Mitchell,
Yes.
Vicky,
I'm confused on this RA1 and RA2 because on RA1, yay. RA2, yay.
Oh, you have to.
you gotta pick one or the other.
I hear that.
Hilarious.
I'm going to abstain because I only want 2 stories in there, RA2.
Renee Yohannemeyer.
No.
We should have had the option, I think.
Okay, now we go to teams. Vince Valdez. He was on there.
He was on, he had to leave.
Okay. Not present for vote.
2-story on RA2.
Debbie or Julie?
Hold on. I think I typed that fast. Goodness. Julie,
Julie abstain.
did you say abstain?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Debbie.
As a point of order, I asked for the map to be shown before we started voting, and I think that did confuse some people.
Oh, I didn't
We're
hear that.
combining R2 and we're combining 2 different developments, and someone also asked that those be split. So as a point of order, I think that has contributed to the confusion. I think with 2 members abstaining, that opens us up for confusion, which has revealed itself.
So Catherine made the motion. Does she want to rescind that and we make them into 2 different ones? That's up to you, right?
Are people confused as to what's RA1, RA2?
They want to vote on them separately.
Vote separate?
Can we see the map, please, again, just to clarify?
Yes.
I'm fine if we'd like to separate the vote.
You want to separate it?
I'm okay with that. We can
If that's
do that.
easier for everyone, we can separate
Okay,
the vote.
sounds good. My butt is hurting. Sitting here for hours. It's just-
So if you would like to rescind your vote, we can make the 2 new different motions.
Anyway, so that's.
Can you put up the map?
Yeah, it gives us.
I had a side gig of.
Wow.
It's
not our.
Okay, so let's bring up the map.
I'm not shipping your stuff. You're gonna be.
So then can I redo my motion then?
You can rescind it.
Resend it?
Voting, it's gotta go. We gotta vote.
Finish the vote.
Finish.
Okay, push the vote. Okay.
Okay, we finished the vote.
Debbie didn't give her, did she?
Well, you,
We're waiting on Debbie's vote.
I am against 3 stories at this time. With
So
2
you're voting,
districts.
so your vote is for negative then?
Must be a no.
Okay, so we had 16 people voting. No, 15.
15,
1, 2,
10 yes,
and 3-2.
3 no's.
2 abstained and 10 yes.
Okay,
That's what I counted.
so what are we doing with that? Are we going with that? Or are we going to revote?
Well, according to that vote, the motion carries.
Yeah, actually it does. We've got quorum.
I'd like to make a motion that we switch RA2 to 2-story.
Is there, okay, so there's a motion to vote RA2 for a maximum height of 2 stories.
I'll second it.
Second, okay,
Hold on. Make RA2 2-story. Okay. And then Mark, you seconded that?
Yes.
We're gonna discuss that.
Any discussion on this, or are we ready to vote? Call the question. What? Okay, all right, so those in favor, we'll do a roll call vote. So those in favor of RA2 will vote yay.
Is the motion?
Two stories.
Stories.
Two stories.
Yes.
The motion clear before we start
The
that?
motion is cleared and yes, it's second.
No, everybody understands what we're voting on, so we don't get in this confusion again.
Everyone understands that an affirmative vote is to make the maximum height for RA2 2 stories. Yep. You're good? All right. Christine, ready when you are.
Okay. Nate,
Yes.
Meredith,
No.
hold on this one.
Thanks for doing all the typing.
Ralph,
No.
Mark,
Yes.
Steve,
No.
Leo,
Yes.
Scott Hatfield,
No.
Scott Cutler,
No.
Jeff Trannell.
No.
Catherine Harrington,
Nope.
Kevin does not vote, Mitchell Callahan,
No.
Vicky,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Vince Valdez not present, Julie Eliason,
Yes.
and Debbie.
Yes.
Okay.
I have 8 to 7, no.
4, 5, 6, 7 yeses. 1, 2, 6, 7, 8 no's.
Okay, motion fails then.
So motion fails.
Motion fails. Okay, so we're at 3-story for RA2 and 2-story for RA1.
Okay. Other discussion on the railroad
Or
district?
3, we need to decide. Bill.
RA3.
Can I ask this question though? Do we, there are a lot more design guidelines besides just the building height. So are we discussing that in a different section or is that, can we just motion to adopt those as well?
I think we kind of voted on those already, except we did modify them a little bit to add the buffering. So I'm assuming everything we showed you tonight's included in that. If you.
RA3, I don't think we ever confirmed.
We're,
No,
no,
we gotta use RA3.
1 and 2.
Not get that, yeah.
on just the good guidelines in itself, the buffering and the architecture guidelines.
I could very well have a memory lapse, so.
So I think the big thing on RA3 is the height of those buildings as well too, right?
So are we saying we're approving everything for RA1 and 2 then? Are we making any consideration to what?
The motion was only on height.
Yeah, but
We had already done the
Let's
rest.
do RA3 and then come back.
Let's do the height question, and then we can talk about the overall guidelines.
so, the height for RA3, there was discussion on going up to 4 stories on that one. Is there, so we can open up for discussion?
Yeah, RA3 is the area south of Railroad.
Oh, sorry, before we do motion, we need comments from committee and then we will go to public forum. I'm ahead of myself here.
I'm going to ask a question that's quite obvious. We never did discuss it, but is there any such thing as proxy voting?
We don't have anything on our bylaws for it. Yeah.
Actually, I think we do. I looked because when I was on vacation, yeah, you can't do proxy vote, this committee.
Could someone describe what proxy vote is?
You tell
somebody, you can vote for me, I'm not going to be at the meeting.
Vote for 'em. They'll tell you like about this.
Okay.
But this can give
Sure.
the authority to vote for him. Tell you what he wants to do.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times, the reason why organizations don't do proxy voting is they want people here to hear all the discussion and everything before they give their vote. Is that correct typically?
Yeah. Different
Makes sense.
I believe there was a question about that when Nan was leaving the board with the council and they indicated they didn't want only those that attended.
Thank you.
vote.
Okay, that's what I was trying to remember too. Okay, so questions on RA3 for the committee before we open it up to public forum?
I just think we have a lot of potential here to do the hotel. I love the rooftop designs that we saw, the business day ride sip. I mean, really make this a gathering place, a community place. We could maybe do it an accelerator for young businesses. We could do larger condos. So a family of 4, 5, 6 could live in a bigger, larger condo. I just think this could be a real showpiece for our area. It could be a real attraction tool. So, and again, it's that, this is the road that everybody sees. And so I think this is the road that also can capture the imagination of people as they walk through and in for Valley Junction. This can be that opposite showpiece to really gain that attraction. Debbie mentioned it in Las Vegas, the attraction. What were those lights? Well, we're not in Las Vegas yet, but that gets us excited about the potential of being in Las Vegas or wherever. So I just, I think this could be a really beautiful area for us.
I think
Development.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think especially on kind of the western edge of RA3, the boutique hotel has been throwing out a lot, or breweries or anything like that. And I know those need to have higher ceilings to accommodate brew pubs and everything too. So I think that's definitely needs to be taken into consideration when we talk about the height of buildings. Also too, the little area just south of Lincoln there, that's actually, correct me if I'm wrong, part of the Five Waters project, right? And so eventually the goal is to develop that into kind of an activity area with zip lines and everything. So how great would it be to have these areas where people can also entertain themselves or stay at a hotel there if they're attending that, adventure park or, the marathon loop and the pedestrian bridge and everything. So that really has potential down there. So that area really kind of excites me as well. Yes.
I don't know if there's a way to kind of zoom in, because I think as we talk about this, it's important that we clarify that not all of the blue in RA3 is actually buildable.
I don't know if that's the.
When we get those, when we pinch it down towards the middle there, there's really not enough room to build anything there.
Like where it tapers? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty narrow there. Yeah.
Did we study?
Pull that up or?
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful.
And the reality is, in RA3, you've got a piece along first here that's developable, and you got this piece. That's really about it.
Yeah, it's not as large as it looks. Right. Yeah.
So I think we really have to maximize that space as still allow for parking.
Good point. Be nice to see that.
Yes, Steph.
I liked your point about having larger apartments or condos. I'm similar to Nate in that I don't want to live in an apartment with my family. I want my house and my grass and everything, but there are a lot of people who do appreciate the opportunity to live in the kind of that free, where you're free of your yard work and everything. So to have some of those that are larger or, just bigger opportunities for families, I think would be great. Not that we can determine what gets built there, but
Yeah.
it's something we don't have.
Yeah, I mean, and also maybe accommodate people that are like downsizing, that are empty nesters, that want to live kind of in a more urban area, but don't want to have to do yard work or anything like that too. Yes.
If I recall, we were going to look into the average site of like hotel boutiques. Did you guys study that?
Yeah, in fact, some of the pictures that we showed you here, I showed you one of a boutique hotel in Springfield, Missouri, and that was 4 stories. I showed you a Hampton in Cedar Falls, which is right adjacent to their downtown. That was 6 stories, but it did have some structured parking attached to it. So
if you had like 50 of these, what would be the average size? I'm just curious.
Sorry, what was that?
You had 50 different ones across the United States. What would be the average size?
Of a boutique hotel?
Like 4 stories?
I think 4 stories probably, yeah.
It's an opinion or is it
Yeah, I would
educated?
3 to 4. I mean, I haven't researched it, but the ones I can mentally picture, they're in the 3 to 4 range.
All right, so just again, there's a couple things. Debbie's asking me a couple things here. So if we can, since she cannot see who's speaking, she would like to request that everybody says their name before they start talking.
Can't she see?
Absolutely. Any other committee discussion before we open it up for public forum? Sorry, this is Meredith speaking. No? Okay, then we will go ahead and open it up for public forum. If anyone wants to have any comments or questions regarding the RA3 district, now would be the time.
Yeah, one question. You got to come all the way up here, put you
Builds the anticipation.
There you go. RA3, it sounds like based on your demos and pictures and all that other stuff, the idea is get hotels.
Well,
That's one of the options.
guaranteed.
Well, that doesn't guarantee it, but
No.
that's the point of the demo right here. It's showing 3-story hotels, one in Kansas, wherever you got.
Yeah, the sketches, we scaled it just to make sure that parking would work in terms of a hotel or in terms of the park.
And then you're looking for transit housing to temporary housing to accommodate whatever affair that you think is going to happen in Alabama. And looking at a moneymaker thing in terms of having hotels here, but you got already 10 different hotels right down the street.
Right, yeah,
So
but
you're getting ready to add 2 more here.
Like,
There's been a lot of people express interest in having someplace to stay near Valley Junction.
yeah,
So that when they come to visit, because there's a lot of out-of-town shoppers and there's not, I mean, yeah, we're on my side of West Des Moines, there's too many hotels. But there's nothing here, you know?
other than,
That's my family. Uber works fine.
Yeah.
Love it. I love that he said that.
looks like Bud's coming up.
This is just.
And then we have,
Single.
Tina has,
Oh, sure. It looks like Bud's coming up here, so I want to make sure we get to him first.
I was looking that way.
I need to find a release on that.
Projects that are south. Tracks there. Those are 3 stories.
I have a question because as in, I might be optimistic. but
Talk up, Bud.
Has any,
Yeah.
Talk up.
has anybody ever considered what happens if we would ever have a flood down here in Valley Junction? And don't say it can't happen, because I've seen 4 big floods down here in my lifetime. And they built a levee in, which is good, but that levee also holds water in. Not only does it keep water out, it holds it in. It used to be West Des Moines was surrounded by farm ground. And that water, when it rained, that ground would absorb that, but they paved everything. And all that water runs right down here in the junction. If we ever get a 10 or 12 inch rain in that in a few hours, I think we'll see a flood like you had never seen. I just considered, have you ever thought about that?
Yes, in fact, when we had First Street closed down, we put in a massive storm sewer underneath First Street. And then we had Grand closed down this last year to put in that other piece of that storm drainage.
Yeah, but that only holds so much water.
But the intent is to pump it over the levee. And also what used to be Bridges of Iowa on Vine Street, the city purchased that property to turn it into a detention basin, because that was one of the issues, is all the water from upstream coming in through here, and it had to go a long way and it just kind of spread out.
Well, you think them pumps and that will keep out 10 or 12 inches?
I don't know what the
Well,
capacity of those are, but
I
it's
hope
meant
it
to.
never happens, because I've been through that.
Yeah, right.
93 was something else.
Yeah, I was here.
And I'll tell you that, it didn't come to, down here, it come through 7th Street up there, through the stamp pit.
And do we accommodate for where we stand now, or does that accommodate for all of this new construction and new concrete?
Okay. The levee project, what the Corps of Engineers, the kind of irony of things was Corps of Engineers was going to start construction of the levee the Monday following when the floods occurred. So the Corps took a look at the height of the levee, or height of that flood, which was closer to the 500-year flood than the 100-year flood, and they put it 2 foot higher than that. So this area is probably one of the safer areas in the state in terms of flood protection. And then with what we have also done is take a look at, because this is a bowl, take a look at, okay, stormwater coming into the area, what do we need to do to make sure it doesn't flood? And so that's why we did all the massive improvements up on Grand Avenue area. And that's why we, bought the Bridges site to turn that into a detention facility. Now, I think there are some additional items that we have in the city's capital improvement program, but I can't tell you what those are specifically. But I think we've done as good a job as anybody can probably do to mitigate any risk of flooding because of water that's fallen within the, what I call the drainage shed, so that this area doesn't fill up when we get a big storm. Now, yes, we probably couldn't handle a biblical storm like Mr. Beveridge was talking about, but how many times have we gotten a 10-inch, rainfall in a short period of time too?
It doesn't rain anymore in West Des Moines due to climate change. So. True statement.
Yeah. All right, Helen?
Ellen Rodish, 109 13th Street, West Des Moines, 50265. I had a little bit of humor on this because in the 50s, they started building up Fair Meadows and they put in a trailer court. And this is past, predicts future. They wanted to put in more trailer parks, build trailers. And so they straightened, well, we won't call it what we used to call it as a kid, but Fair Meadows Creek. And it came right down and it went right into between railroad and the railroad, and we had to have tetanus shots because of the smell. That kind of gives you a little thing about this. One of the other things in the flood of 93, they had put pumps behind on 63rd behind the Quick Trip. There's pumps back there. Remember where they're at? Come and behold, here comes the flood in, I think it was 2010 or 2009. Eight or somewhere around. I can't remember exactly the year. Lo and behold, all the basements in West Des Moines was flooding. The Thursday night, the Valley Junction Farmers Market, water all over. The city had forgot to turn the pumps on, but they didn't know how. So the guy that was my neighbor that installed them, and he called the city to go down and turn the pumps on. And within 15 minutes, the town was dry. So I mean, mistakes are made. But that was just a little bit of humor for this, because you got to have a little bit light. But the past predicts the future, and the environment is changing. And I'm into environmental stuff. But the thing that I had was, and I listened to your voting stuff on the 3 stories. I don't think everybody really understood what they were voting for, or at least getting a 3-story building along Railroad Avenue. The pictures that I showed you were showing you the thing, and then all of a sudden you got a building up like this down by 4th Street, I believe, where you're talking. And I'm going to be very vocal about that. I think it's out of place to put a 3-story because we're still trying to keep it historical. And then you get this building, which you can see that the designs that I showed, you can put them up there real quick. The fire station, of course, has to be higher because of that, but you have your subway, you have your and that's the industrial area. And then you go along Railroad Avenue and you've got the wood shop, you got Casey's and all that. And then all of a sudden you're sticking in a 3-story building? No.
Helen, we've already moved on from.
I know you moved on to it, but that was part of the project when you went and had the vote. I don't think they understood. Some of them really understood which vote we won, because I'm going, well, yeah, and then it's a no. So I think the vote was, I'm sorry, but that's my opinion.
That is your opinion. And if there was confusion, we separated out the votes into 2 different votes.
Separated it out, and then, well, anyway, I don't think the vote was clarified that they were voting for a 3-story.
I think it was.
Story is way out of line.
It was pretty clear, I think, multiple times.
I didn't think it was from what I was hearing, but then, of course, we don't have microphones for everybody to hear.
Nope, absolutely.
But anyway, that's.
We have somebody.
Thank you, Helen. Okay, thank you for your comments.
You mean Janae?
Janae, sorry.
Okay, I was like, I haven't seen it.
There's a lot going on. I'm attaching like crazy.
Janae, did you have a comment?
I did, thank you. Janae, I live at 604 5th Street.
What's your last name, Janae?
Sorry, VZ.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I just wanted to make comment on the R3 section, as in favor of maybe seeing some hotels or hotel boutiques going up in that area. And my reasoning might be a little selfish. I I have family who comes and visit me pretty frequently, and my house is small. I can't accommodate all those people, and there is nowhere near Valley Junction that is nice. Like my family has stayed at the Comfort Inn up here on 8th Street. I don't know if you guys have ever been inside in there, but it's not that nice. And sorry, someone's trying to call me.
Station over there.
And the closest place for them to even stay somewhere that's remotely nice and comfortable is Jordan Creek or Urbandale or Clive. And, those places are 15, 20 minutes away, depending on traffic. And if we had somewhere that's, down the street from my house, literally, here on this street, I think it would be not only great for the people who live in this neighborhood, who have family members who they can't accommodate, but also for the businesses and the events and, everything that goes on. So that's what I would just like you to consider, not just the business area, but like the residents as well, who may have out of town family, friends who want to visit them, but maybe not want to stay in their home, but not Jordan Creek, So thank you.
Thank you, Janae. We appreciate your comments.
I'd like to speak on that for Janae too. I mean, I have a motel right here in Valley Junction. It's only rented maybe on average twice a week. It's very nice. If you look it up, it's about a 5-star. It's very nice and it's not overpopulated. I'm not doing, we don't make a lot of money on that. It holds a lot of people. It could hold a good sized group, but it's maybe rented twice a week. So to say that there's nothing in the area.
Well, maybe we don't know about it.
Where is it?
I would say, I think a lot of people probably don't know about it, so.
I mean, it's right off of First Street. I mean, it's advertised, big sign. I don't know.
The old Eagle
I
property.
definitely have I've never ever have heard of a hotel being in, so I definitely have never seen it. So thank you for mentioning it.
Start looking at
Yep.
Renee.
Walnut Place.
Okay, any other feedback for public forum?
Kevin Goodlaxon, 304 2nd Street. I'm wondering if you could put in the language on this. Location south of Railroad, north of Lincoln Way, or Lincoln Street.
Sure.
That's
fine. Let's do it.
And then maybe something also, when you were talking over here about, this is really about the only area you can, did you put that in, did you put the language maybe?
Well, most of the buildings in that area are relatively new.
Right, so what I'm saying is kind of, maybe the language could limit it over here to Highway 28. On this side of these new buildings, you've got your senior apartment living, you've got your Meals from the Heartland, maybe nothing along Lincoln Street here, and Lincoln Street here.
If you don't mind me asking, what's your concern about that?
Well, I brought it up the last meeting a little bit too. When you're standing on that stage, and that's kind of where the community gets together, listens to a band, and kind of congregates on. And so when this is the topical view, and when you're looking out across Railroad Avenue, and you see this green space, and that's got a lot of value. I know it's got value to developers too, because they can sit up on a 4-story balcony and look and have the people look at the river. That's nice too. But it's important to have this clear so that when you're looking, you've got this line over here that's clear. You can see this tree line, and this line here that's clear. You can see the tree line. I know these boxes, these red boxes are just to indicate what areas we're talking about. But we certainly don't want to see a 4-story building down here.
Well,
So maybe
they
just
can't go in there because
Yeah.
of detention.
Yes, and so the language would help that. The language help.
North of Lincoln's fine.
South of Railroad, north of Lincoln. And then maybe, I think if you don't fertilize this, or you don't put it in writing, the developers will sometimes do an amazing thing with the babies. I think that's important though, to have that view open. I know you're not going to develop anything across the country, but it's important to have that open so you can see. Thank you.
So public forum.
Anyone else for public forum? Okay, now would be in the time and place that we would close public forum. Yes, Nate?
Make a motion. I'd like to see footage with it too.
All right, any other discussion or is there, what now?
I didn't hear that, Nate.
I said, when we make a motion, instead of saying like 4 stories, I'd rather see 4 stories, X number of feet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't hear that.
Any other discussion or are we ready for a motion?
I want to get clarification. 4 stories, X number of feet. That's something that's doable. That according to the zoning,
We can, I mean, that's certainly whatever you want to put into the guidelines.
Are we thinking like 48 feet?
Yeah, I mean, you can put in
What's
42
your
feet
intent
or
with that, or why?
story or.
I do construction for a living, so I see these massive first floors and stuff. So you can go in and put a 16, 18-foot first floor.
Does that matter?
Does it not?
I mean, that's what I'm asking. I don't know that
You
it
know, it's
doesn't matter to
same
me.
thing, why I asked the question in the, like R2 area, if you're putting a hip roof on, that dramatically.
I get it in that area. Totally get what you were saying there. I mean, I totally get that. Over in this area, I'm just wondering,
Especially if you are doing like a rooftop bar or anything like that and you want to have,
That adds like,
on there.
because then you gotta have skirting and everything else around that. So now that's more or less a whole nother floor on top of that. So just saying we need to be mindful of that because, and
I think we need to be mindful too of the opportunity for whoever's building whatever. I mean, to put a rooftop, I would assume that that's the best place for that to happen versus the other RA areas, that would not be popular there. Or appropriate maybe, that's the best place for that. So I mean,
are we negotiating at this point?
I just want to make the point
Negotiate on RA too.
that, yeah, the point that do we want to limit that structure further than the 4 stories?
You could limit to 4 stories and so many feet and they could put a 3-story there. There's nothing saying they can't put a 3-story there.
I don't know why, I don't see why we should pair those together and kind of reduce
That's tip.
creativity and like opportunity of that area to do a 16-foot ceiling in a lobby or something like that. Or if you put your rooftop on top of the 4th floor, you'll probably need some sort of walk up that's going to need to go beyond whatever.
The service area, but add to the height and fencing.
And that's kind of why I said what I said, because now we could have a 16-foot first floor and you could put skirting on the whole thing. This could be 65, 70 foot tall on everything. And not against this, but everything around it is all single floor. So, I mean, you got to think that.
Oh, because there's a.
Well, I'm just saying across the street.
Thing right there with
right there, but on the other corner across the street, you got like car lot, you got Quick Trip, you got a single story business here.
Pretty
That's a huge intersection.
I mean, you're talking,
Well, we could have a vote on to include the feet in the.
Thank you for that discussion on that.
From Debbie and Julie this time, not.
Yes, absolutely. Debbie, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just playing the believing game, and it would be helpful. I'm not asking anybody to introduce themselves, but as a person who's trying to understand where people are coming from, I don't recognize everyone's voices, and some other people have said that too. So you're calling on me, so people know it's Debbie that's talking. But sometimes when people speak out, we don't necessarily know who the person is, and it's just helpful to associate a name with a face and with a perspective. But secondly, in terms of what Nate is saying, we're talking about what's visual. What's visual makes a huge impact, which is what I was talking about the entrance. And no, I don't think of Valley Junction as Las Vegas. I was trying to use a metaphor to help explain what I meant by that. But it does make a difference. I mean, 12 feet, or so. But we're thinking about scenario analysis and what could happen, and the height and the mass, which was very clear by our visual preference survey, that people didn't like the mass as much as the scalability. It does make a difference if it's defined in terms of stories or feet, and I believe that is what the code is defined in terms of. Is that correct or not? Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments there, Debbie.
I think she asked a question. Is that correct, Brad?
What is it out west? Just out of curiosity, out by Jordan Creek, is it by feet or is it by stories?
Zoning code is by feet.
So what makes this special?
It was what was proposed.
Yeah,
Let Mike answer that.
It was really thinking about the character and the amount of development we could get on the site. Honestly, I'm fine if you want to have 4 stories and a height, but if you do, I would put the height large enough so that you could have something on the roof of that 4 story. So my suggestion, if you're going to add a height, is be open to as much allowing for that taller first story and something on the roof would be my suggestion.
Could we phrase it as like structurally kind of like
Structure and then make it
40 and then allowance for,
like skirting for a patio or something.
Yeah.
Something of that nature.
Yeah.
does that sound agreeable, Mark?
I have a question. I maybe don't get out enough, but how many 4-story high rooftop bars are there in Des Moines?
There's, what's the one downtown?
Republic,
The Republic.
AC Hotel,
Yeah.
and that's probably
both of
have
Not like a whole
stories.
floor, are they?
Yeah.
They're just like a little thing.
A little sliver, it's not the whole.
Bar.
Yeah, and then there's an indoor service area and then an outdoor service area.
Many vibrant cities like Milwaukee, like Minneapolis have a lot of rooftop bars.
Kansas City.
Kansas City, they're so fun. I would like a cocktail right now, actually.
I know a lot about these.
Ralph, will you buy me a beer after this?
We're gonna have the first one in West.
Well, as far as.
Hotel.
But yeah, Wellman's has a rooftop bar.
Yeah.
It's not, it's big, this
I
too.
can think of a lot of.
It's way taller than the other stuff over there.
Yeah.
Fine.
Anyway.
Not a historic area though.
No, I mean, every area is historic.
So if you add the height, that's why I'm suggesting go to something like 60 feet, because that would allow for a
Service.
deck or a arbor or whatever they wanted to put up there.
Yeah.
Do that.
Now we're more like 5 stories.
Is there
Is it 4-story or? would
4
you-
stories, maximum of 60 feet.
basically 48 for the actual building and then allowance up to 60 feet to allow for a rooftop patio?
If you looked at that one example that's on the screen right now, right, it's a 4-story, the top one is a 4-story building. But then in the middle of it is
That
really
dark
hard to see
light
in this
one.
picture. There's a little bar area that's popped up in the middle of it, so it's set back a little bit, but it's still a pretty cool little space and it allows the elevator to come up to that space and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So how would you put that in there for language if you were to do something like that?
Not to exceed 6.
No, what he's saying is in the center, so it's not even around the perimeter, that would be that height.
We could add some language in the guideline that said that the main 4 stories has to be set back
I think.
at least 15 feet or something.
That would be a compromise.
It could be anything.
What if the top floor has a higher ceiling height on the top floor?
Well, if we're putting a cap of, say,
Because a lot of places are like that.
They would just work.
That's why I think just having the 4 stories
Yeah.
and or 60 feet keeps it open to,
Yeah.
if you want to have your second story taller, it allows a lot of flexibility.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yes. And Julie, you have a question or comment?
Well, I guess I just wanted to chime in. The conversation's flowing beyond my initial hand raise.
Sorry.
I guess I'm not for limiting the space at all. I don't understand why we're suggesting limits when we don't even know. This is the most undefined, most opportunistic piece. And so I am against gross limits to this. We've talked about wanting performance venues that we don't even know what height requirements would work for a performance venue. I guess I'm just for creativity, and I think Mike explained at the beginning that the site restrictions and the parking requirements is going to kind of create the size of building that site needs to be anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not too worried about anything crazy. And I really don't want to limit this. I think Steph probably had the best, no more than 60 or something like that, but I'm still against a lot of limits. That's my piece.
Thank you, Julie, for that.
Yeah.
So how does everyone feel? Yep, Vicky.
Right, would it be correct that through the site planning process, that would be taken into consideration and, the city, those who are experts in the area, et cetera, could then
Any,
say, this is what, okay.
any outdoor bar area or something like that, whether it's on ground level or on a roof, counts in terms of parking requirement. So they would have to provide parking to accommodate, not only occupants of the building, but people on the roof that are there for whatever reason.
Fine with that.
So discussion on that. People feel comfortable leaving off the foot requirement, or do we want that on there?
I'd leave it off.
Leave it off?
Same. I'd leave it
Do we
off.
want to, do we want to do a vote for how we vote?
Oh, my gosh.
Or otherwise, is there a motion to just go ahead?
But is the motion, is there a motion?
There is not a motion on this.
What's the limit?
Is there a motion?
Are we talking about envisioning 60-foot tall buildings at the corner of First and Railroad? I just want to clarify.
Oh, First and Lincoln more like.
Well, that's what we're discussing, basically, just the story vote, or if we're gonna add a foot requirement on there. And so
I
that's-
understand. I'm having a hard time. I want to make sure that we follow a cogent process. Because we're going to have to stand behind this. And so I'm asking clarifying questions. We're talking about an area that includes the corner. Is this correct? Of
Yes.
First and Railroad. And we're talking about not limiting the height of what would be on the corner of that intersection. Is that correct?
No, Debbie, this is quiet. We're talking about the area south of the railroad tracks to Lincoln. And then the area off of 9th Street, south of the railroad tracks.
Yeah, I'm not asking this for myself. I appreciate the map being there. I'm asking this to make sure that we stay on track and that people understand that we understood, all of us and the people listening, that we understand what we're actually talking about. And my question is, I see the map, and maybe not everybody sees the map, but we are including the corner piece of RA3. Is that correct?
Yes.
Of
Yes.
First and Railroad. So we are actually talking about an unlimited height requirement at the corner.
No, 60 feet is been discussed or 4 stories. Debbie, this is Clyde again. We're talking about the discussion that I'm hearing is 4 stories or 60 feet or a combination of the two. That's what the discussion's been going around. And if I could, I guess I agree with Nate's point in that, so that we don't get later on, like, well, wait a minute, that's not, is that 4 stories or what is it? And I like the idea of incorporating height and in terms of number of stories and height in terms of feet, because then it's clear, in terms of what the max limit is. And I certainly agree with your point there, so that we don't have any ambiguity later on and disputing it.
Sure.
Not to go back on the transitional area, was it 3 stories or was it 36 feet there?
And
The
Transition we haven't got to.
Yeah.
Or, RA2, sorry, excuse me.
2, it said 3 stories. Is what the vote was.
We should go back and probably put a footage on that, just my opinion.
So right now, I motion that the maximum height you can build in Railroad 3, RA3, is 60 feet or 4 stories. And or 4 stories. So your envelope is 60 feet. It's 4 stories that you can build up to, though.
Whichever is greater. that another way to say it?
Well, I guess I need
Four
to,
stories, I've never seen 6 feet.
Yes.
there we go.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, okay.
Hold on.
You're good.
Up to 4 stories, not to exceed.
Any other discussion on this? Okay, are we ready to vote? Steve, did you have any comments? Okay. Christine, ready when you are?
Okay. Nate,
No.
Meredith,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Mark,
I guess, yes.
Steve,
Not real excited about this one.
Yes.
Leo,
Yes.
Scott Hatfield,
He stepped away.
Oh,
an X. Scott Cutler,
Yes.
Jeff Trannell,
Yes.
Catherine Harrington,
Yes.
Kevin's gone, doesn't vote. Mitchell Callahan,
Yes.
I know you made them, I just still ask. Vicky,
Yes.
Renee,
Yes.
Vince is gone. Julie Eliason,
Yes.
Debbie.
No.
Okay, so
10, 11, 12,
take out
13.
Scott.
I have 13 yes too now.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 yeses.
Okay,
How
motion.
many did you have?
I have 13.
I counted 12 too, conflict of
6,
interest.
7, 8, 9,
Did you count Scott?
10, 11, 12.
Oh,
I had 12.
okay, never mind. It's getting
yeses.
crazy with my hashtags.
Okay.
Okay, so 12 yeses, the motion carries. And so that would be for 4 stories with a maximum not to exceed 60 feet. Okay. Any other discussion on, next discussion on railroad?
Just so we're all clear, I think maybe it's a good idea to vote on the overall guidelines for the railroad corridor area, including the revisions that we've incorporated today. And I don't have any problem adding in another one that's not actually in here that would say that if anything goes above 4 stories within that 60 feet, it has to be on the top of the building by, at least 20 or something.
With guidelines we just voted on, I'd rather just keep it at that.
All right, so forget that part, but
Just so you can put on more height yet.
okay, that's fine.
Okay, so the overall design guidelines, any other discussion for railroad district on overall design guidelines? Yes.
I don't know if anybody wants to consider what Nick said earlier about a berm or anything running back into the residential. Just throwing it out there as something that was brought up earlier.
Oh, for the noise abatement?
Yep.
It looks like we've got some homework there. We don't have good answers.
Hmm?
It looks like we've got homework to do there because we didn't get good answers on any type of a noise barrier.
Could there be
What answers would you expect so you could take a vote on it?
Well,
What are you missing?
we actually gave one.
for the noise?
So we have to build berms everywhere that are,
It was one solution, unless somebody else has as much.
I mean, right now, if you looked at the pictures they showed, there's like nothing separating the commercial. There's like the picture they showed, the fence is falling down, there's random trees.
I think the biggest difference now is going to be a lot of these businesses might house a dozen employees at the most. I don't know. I'd like to see a statistic on it. Now you're talking, there could be, I don't know.
I think it depends on what business goes in there. It could be
True.
one employee.
It could be one, it could
12.
be 60. I don't, we don't know. So I think that's where the suggestion come from. It's hard to say. I'm not going to play the number game and
Yeah, I have no idea either. I mean, right now, we're looking at buildings that are there right now that are single story. They could just tear them down and have a lot of employees there with a much bigger building.
In terms of, if your question was about a noise attenuation, Nick is correct. Landscaping does not attenuate noise. A solid barrier in terms of a solid fence or a wall does attenuate noise. The doing berming. Now, in terms of the city's current regulations, you can do a 6-foot fence or you can do a landscape buffer. But typically the width of the landscape buffer, you're only going to get a berm that's probably 3 feet tall, which not going to do much of anything in terms of mitigating any potential noise. Now, if you put if you had a 3-foot berm and a fence on top of it, yeah, that might give you a little bit more, but then I've seen issues with that in that what's on the other side of the fence sometimes doesn't get maintained too. So
That kind of
there's pros and cons, there's pros and cons.
We also have to kind of look at how, and it can be designed correctly, but we also have to look at water drainage as well too. When you have that water drain off of both sides of that steep slope, it could be designed where it could be accommodated, but we have to look at that as well too. And I think the thing we have to look at is that, it's Valley Junction is a older community. That's one reason why we're here. It was built in a certain way, in a certain fabric where things were kind of a little bit closer together. The question that comes with the berms is that, are we still keeping in mind with that or not? I'm not arguing one way or another. I'm just saying that we already have kind of a fabric down here in Valley Junction that we've been kind of fighting for. And I'm questioning, okay, to apply a more suburban type of buffering standard, are we kind of going opposite of what we were trying to do in the first place? And again, I'm not arguing one way or another. I'm just kind of throwing it out there as food for thought.
Good point. Meredith, any comment?
But I'm sorry?
I'd like to comment there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Clyde, wouldn't it be accurate to say that the traffic noise on Railroad would exceed any noise you'd get on the building?
Yes, in fact.
Kind of a moot point.
Yeah, it somewhat is. Yeah, truthfully, by putting a taller structure along Railroad Avenue, you're probably going to mitigate some of the noise that people.
Better. Yeah. And if we look at Helen's pictures, recommendations that were made tonight far exceed what they're experiencing now that they're accustomed to. Right?
And in fact, Christine can speak to that subject because we were wanting to use federal funds to do this one housing program, and we ended up being able to do it because of noise issues associated with Railroad Avenue. And the Fed said, no, you got problems here in terms of noise.
None of us hear the trains anymore, right?
My hearing's so bad. I can't
We
hear
thought
anything.
they had more problems with the airplane noise, but it was more of the vehicular traffic noise. Go
Pretty
figure.
noisy there. I ride my bike down through there and it's excessive, the noise.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on the guidelines? Okay, so at this point, we would open it up for public forum on the overall design guidelines. If you all have any comments on the overall design guidelines for the railroad district. No? Seeing none, we will close public forum on that topic. Any other discussion on the overall design guidelines, or are we ready for a motion?
I guess I have one. So are there actually ways of building like acoustically insulating walls? Like, is that a thing that exists?
It is.
Yeah.
And
Super duper expensive.
is it a really high?
I mean, one of the reasons to even allow normally our max height is 6 foot. Going 8 foot, we figured, okay, that's going to help mitigate any potential noise. But as Nick pointed out, where he lives, he hears them emptying trash dumpsters, 3 blocks away. And that's one of the problems. If this area is a very flat area and noise travels long distance.
I hear Bel-Air all the time.
Yep.
I like 3 blocks.
How many times you heard the cement plant guys
Here.
hanging
Trains,
containers?
the trash, and the lights stay on all night at Holiday Park. The noise.
All right,
That's
is there a motion to approve the design guidelines for
about the country.
Railroad Park? Or Railroad Park, Railroad Avenue. sorry.
It's getting late,
Is there a motion?
So move.
So moved. Is there a second? Second by Vicky. Thank you. Do we need to do roll call or can we just do all in favor? Aye.
We can do a roll call real quick, right? Christine? She looked at me like, really?
I know.
I'm trying.
She has to switch screens, so.
Pages and. Right, 10 right now.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's go big or go home, Christine.
It's a very small font.
Narrow those margins.
We all are, sweetie. Okay, so the motion is to approve the RA design guideline.
Correct.
Right. Nate,
No.
Meredith,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Steve Freeberg,
Yes.
Cleo,
Yes.
Scott Hatfield,
Yes.
Scott Cutler,
Yes.
Steph Trannell,
Yes.
Catherine Harrington,
Yes, ma'am.
Mitchell Callahan,
Yes.
Vicky Longhill,
Yes.
Renee Yohannemeyer.
No.
Julie Eliason
Yes.
and Debbie.
No.
It carries, let me count, 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
12 yes, the motion carries and the design guidelines for the railroad zone are approved. Or is recommended to carry on to planning.
So one quick suggestion, it's been 3 hours in, we're done, right? We're all
We're done.
right? But do look at the slides we got in there for transition district. If anybody's got questions or wants to talk about it in advance of the next meeting, so maybe we can help advance stuff, do that. I mean, well, obviously we'll present at the next meeting, but take a look. And if you guys, if anything jumps out at you, you want to ask me about, just give me an email, give me a call, something, all right?
And these slides are on the website or they will be
Sure,
short?
will be tomorrow.
Okay.
I will stay.
Yes, April 20th is the next meeting. Wonderful.
Thank you, everybody. We had a lot to get through and appreciate everybody's discussions on it.
That'd be nice.
Go ahead and adjourn.
Yeah, let's not gonna.